elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account, scrutinise his policies and investigate matters of importance to Londoners. Can I welcome officers, members and the public here in the gallery and watching on webcast. This is a Mayor's question time of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. In case of an emergency and any need to exit the building, guests seated in the public gallery should follow the security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Members are reminded that any electronic devices should not be placed in front of the microphones, which must be turned on to speak and turned off once finished. I'm just checking my phone. No, I'm all right. Can I now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies for absence today from Assembly members Cooper and Moama.
Thank you. Since our last Mayor's question time, the Budget and Performance Committee questioned the Met on funding police officer numbers. The Economy, Culture and Skills Committee spoke to businesses in and around Oxford Street on the Mayor's pedestrianisation plans. The Police and Crime Committee published a report calling for greater transparency from the London Policing Board. The committee also met to begin its investigation into grooming gangs in London and wrote to the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime about the impact of AI on online fraud. The Environment Committee published its report with recommendations for stronger price protections for heat network customers in London and began an investigation in the access of green spaces, including the scrutiny of the West London Regional Park. The Transport Committee began its investigations into autonomous passenger vehicles, also known as robo-taxis. I hate that word still. The Housing Committee started its investigation into empty homes and how that impacts the wider London housing crisis. The Planning and Regeneration Committee continued its investigations into overheating of homes during the heat waves and opened up a survey in a call to hear first-hand experiences of residents. Finally, the London Assembly hosted the London Youth Achievement Awards ceremony in collaboration with the London Youth Assembly. This was a really great opportunity to highlight the achievements and impact of young people in London. And of course, this is now an annual event, and I hope that next year we see more Assembly members at that event. Can I just check? We have I believe we have in the public gallery Democracy and Comparative Politics students from the University College of London. Is that right? Wave if it's you. Hello. Can I ask the Assembly to note the interests set out at item 2? And do Assembly members have any other disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to items on the agenda for today's meeting, or any other relevant interests, including any declarations in relation to gifts and hospitality, which are not reflected on the authority's register of gifts and hospitality? No? Good. Can I ask the Assembly to confirm the minutes of the London Assembly Mayor's Question Time meeting held on the 21st of May 2026 to be signed by me as a correct record, noting that since the publication of the agenda, a minor correction has been made to the transcript of the meeting. Brilliant. Thank you. Can I ask the Assembly formally to receive the Mayor's report covering the period from the 8th of May to the 29th of May 2026. The Mayor will now provide an oral update, and both of us are suffering from a cold at the moment, and so please be gentle with both the Mayor and myself. So the Mayor will now provide an oral update of about. Well, I can ask, can't I? I can ask. The Mayor will now provide an oral update of up to 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publication of his report. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. As part of our Loved and Wanted campaign, I'm encouraging Londoners to celebrate and support our vital frontline workers. These are fellow Londoners who keep our city safe and running and who deserve to be treated with decency and dignity. Disgracefully, however, we've also seen a rise in abuse and violence directed at frontline workers across our city and indeed our country. This includes a 28% increase in incidents of violence and aggression against London's bus drivers and rail operating staff, 1,600 incidents of violence and abuse occurring towards retail workers every day across the UK, and more than a quarter of NHS London staff reporting harassment, bullying or abuse at work from the public. It's deeply troubling that those who care for our sick, put food on our shelves and keep our city moving are being treated in this way. And this should not simply prompt reflection, it must lead to action. And that's why I'm calling on all of us to stand up for London's values of equality, inclusion and respect, and to stand shoulder to shoulder with our incredible frontline workers, not only in times of crisis, but each and every day. By doing this, I believe we can make a real difference and help build a better London. A London where there's zero tolerance for hatred, division and abuse, and a London where everyone feels welcome, valued and that they belong. Thank you, Chair. I've been asked for two oral updates, which I'll come to now. The first one is in relation to the Great Israeli Real Estate event asked by Member Polanski. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are unjustifiable and illegal under international law. They're deeply tied to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. I condemn any attempt to sell property in the settlements in the West Bank, be that in London or anywhere else in the world. I share concerns about the Great Israeli Real Estate event taking place in our city, which I oppose. And that's why I've discussed this directly with the Met Police. I'm informed that any allegations of criminality relating to the potential unlawful sale of property at the event would be assessed by the Met with a view to investigation. I've always been clear in my condemnation of what's happening in the occupied territories and in Gaza, and I welcome the sanctions announced by the Foreign Secretary this week against individuals and networks financing and taking part in settler violence in the West Bank. I also welcome the government updating its business risk guidance to make it clear and ambiguous. If you are a British citizen or business, you should not conduct any economic and financial activities in illegal Israeli settlements. Chair, I've been asked for a second oral update as well on the Palantir contract from Member Keith Prince. I want to remind members that decisions made around the UOA procurement are subject to threatened legal action and therefore restricted in what I can say by legal and commercial sensitivities. I fully support the Met using the very latest technology to drive efficiencies and improve performance. However, we must always ensure the correct processes are followed and that we get value for money for taxpayers in London. The Met does not and should not stand above scrutiny when dealing with big tech contracts. Given the tight budgetary constraints the police and public services are operating under, it's even more important that robust processes are followed when awarding very large contracts. The Met does face a very difficult financial situation, which stems from the huge cuts implemented by the previous government and their significant underfunding of the Met's capital city responsibilities, which the current government has started to address. I will not only continue to work with the Met to avoid potential tough choices, but also do my job on behalf of Londoners to scrutinise the Met and ensure value for money for Londoners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I say that with regard to your comments about the unjustified attacks on public service workers, both the Health and Transport Committees have written to you about that and are looking for an urgent reply. Indeed, they have also made recommendations to government as well. So I hope that's something that you can take on board. Assembly Member Polanski, please.
Thank you, and thanks for your clear condemnation of selling stolen Palestinian land and also condemning the event on Sunday. Pleased to hear that you've spoken to the Met Police. Have you spoken to the Home Secretary at all, and if not, are you intending to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I thank the member for raising this? So my office has been in touch with both the Foreign Office and the Home Office. For reasons he'll appreciate, I probably shouldn't comment any further.
Understand. Thanks for taking action on this. Thanks, Chair.
Assembly Member Prince, please.
Thank you. Thank you for that update, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Can you confirm then that the decision to block the Palantir contract was made solely on lawful procurement grounds? Because I have information to suggest that they have satisfied those needs. And is this not a case, Mr. Mayor, of you cutting off your nose to spite your face?
No, Chair, thank you. But I've also seen lots of stuff in the media from those who employ armies of lobbyists and lawyers. I'm quite clear in relation to the procurement processes need to be followed, and that's one of the things that obviously MOPAC are checking. He'll appreciate there is now the threat of legal action, and so we've got to be a bit careful what we say.
Assembly Member Hall.
Hi. Can I talk to you about the pilot scheme, because that from Palantir, because that seems to be separate. Is that going to continue?
Chair, I'm not in a position to discuss either the pilot scheme or the scientific contract for reasons I hope you'll appreciate. There is a procurement process in relation to IT contracts and contracts generally. And one of the things MOPAC is discussing with the Met Police Service and indeed the supplier is whether the correct processes were followed.
I don't really understand that, because the pilot scheme has gone ahead, and that has brought up incredible results, as you well know. If you're looking at results very, very quickly, and of course the pilot scheme was brought in so that 500 members of staff could be lost because the AI could do their work for them. Now it would appear that 500 members of frontline staff will have to be lost if this doesn't go ahead. But the pilot scheme has started and is going on. So I just want to know if you're at least going to finish that part of the process.
Chair, can I speak in general terms for reasons I hope the Assembly will recognise? Pilot schemes in general are a pilot, and what happens normally is there's then a procurement process which are followed. So as and when any pilot comes to an end, you'd expect there to be a procurement process.
So you can confirm that the pilot scheme will carry on until that is finished?
Chair, in general terms, pilot schemes carry on until the pilot is concluded, and then there's normally a procurement process.
Okay. Did you know when you made the decision that you weren't going to be using that particular company, that there would be another round of very tough choices? Because we've just been through a round of very, very tough choices with the Metropolitan Police that not one of us is happy about. Clearly, another round is going to go ahead. Did you think about that before decisions were made?
Chair, regardless of the UOA decision, the Met Police Service was always planning to have to go through another round of difficult choices. And one of the things that we know is because of the cumulative impact of cuts over a number of years, those tough choices would go to not just 26, 27, but 27, 28 as well. And they were discussed indeed during the budget process before Christmas.
I watched the policing board yesterday, Mr. Mayor, and they were very clear there that they are that rolling out AI and technology across the organisation, but it is clear that the decision will limit how much it's used across the full range of criminal intelligence work. So, in effect, are you comfortable that the Met will use technology for HR, but have to solve crimes with pens and paper?
Well, the Met Police Service already uses technology in a whole host of areas. One of the things I'm incredibly proud of is how we've rolled out, in a proportionate way, live facial recognition, which also uses artificial intelligence. And there are a number of other crime fighting as well as administrative matters which AI is used, not just in the police service, the fire service and TfL as well. And we are in favour of technology being used. In fact, we've been challenged in the courts by those who are unhappy with us using this technology. So I'm very comfortable with technology being used, but correct processes have to be followed for obvious reasons.
Yeah, the Commissioner is rightfully furious. You can tell that by the letter or his statement from yesterday. You ask him to do a job properly, then you tie his hands behind his back. And now you can't do anything about that. Tell me, do you have confidence in the Commissioner?
I do have confidence in the Commissioner, but the Assembly will be aware there's been a history of public sector IT contracts going tens of £millions over budget. This is waste. That could be used for frontline services, which is why we have strict procurement processes in place. And indeed, during the budget process at the last plenary session, the Commissioner was rightly challenged about the wastage of tens of millions of pounds in IT contracts.
Mr Mayor, the Labour government proved yesterday that they can't keep us safe as a country. You are clearly not going to be able to keep us safe in London because we're going to be losing hundreds and, well, over 1,000 more police officers. Putting this contract in place could have saved us frontline officers. I'm going to have to leave it there, Chair, but like your Commissioner, I am absolutely furious about this, as indeed Londoners should be.
Sorry. Assembly Member Mahfouz, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr Mayor. You said there is no place for hate in London, and you've called it out both here and abroad on issues of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We see, of course, daily images from the West Bank, children being denied schooling, residents intimidated, injured and killed on their own land. We saw last week the horrific images of a 7-month-old baby being killed in the back of the family's vehicle. Iron Londoners very much welcome what you have said this morning in terms of condemning the Sunday's Expo being hosted in this city, and alongside the comments that we've already heard from the Foreign Secretary, where she has been very clear that the wider issue is that nobody in the UK should be advertising illegal settlements. And of course, they are illegal under international law, under UK law, and in most countries across the globe. Can I ask you how quickly will, if there is evidence that illegal activity is taking place on Sunday, how quickly will that be followed up and actioned by the police?
My understanding, Chair, is there are similar unlawful sales taking place in other parts of the world. I think New York and Canada, and I could be wrong. There could be other places as well. I think the international community has been unambiguous in calling this out for being what it is, which is illegal. And I think what you're seeing is a coordination, I would hope, between those who believe in international law calling this out for what it is. And it's really important we don't condone illegality. Can I just make this one point, which is tangential, but it's really important to say? Nothing that happens in the West Bank or Gaza can justify anti-Semitism in London, the UK, or the Western world. And we've got to distinguish the actions of these settlers with Jewish Londoners, Jewish people across the UK and Jewish people across the globe as well.
Seconded. Yeah, thank you.
Assembly Member Ahmad, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I know, of course, that you cannot go into any detail about the issue with Palantir, but on a broader level, could you talk about why following a correct procurement process is so important to best value for Londoners, please?
Well, Chair, there have been a number of examples where members of the Assembly rightly have challenged the Met Police Service in relation to procurement in the past, in relation to, in fact, IT contracts. But generally speaking, the public sector, when it comes to the awarding of contracts, has to follow correct processes. And I can speak from experience in other areas where there have been processes that have been followed. We've still been challenged in the courts. We've won those legal challenges, but it's really important to follow correct processes. And I'll give a hypothetical in terms of if you are a supplier that feels the process wasn't correct and you could have bid for the contract, you will not unreasonably think you've got a legitimate grievance. And that's why it's incredibly important for not just processes to be followed, but processes to be seen to be followed as well. I'm speaking in general terms. It's really important I caveat what I've said in case that's used in some way in any legal proceedings.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. So back briefly, if I may, on to the Palantir contract. You mentioned there's a lot of comments from lobbyists. I'm not particularly interested in the comments from the lobbyists. What I am interested in is the comments from the commissioner, who I think we can call him all sorts of things, but I don't think anyone's ever called him a lobbyist. And certainly the comments that he made yesterday were very robust in indicating that this decision will now have a significant impact on frontline policing, and the ability to keep Londoners safe. So we've just been through a kind of lengthy and complex budget process, which is always very challenging. If the assurances that have been made during that process were predicated on the potential for making these savings, does that whole process now not just look like a complete and utter farce?
Well, again, I think we're in danger of trespassing into what would have been a contract with a supplier. So, got to be quite careful. I mean, I'm not going to go over the words of the Commissioner yesterday. Suffice to say that we already had in plan, it was discussed at the budget setting process before Christmas and after Christmas, the challenges in terms of Met Police budget 26-27 and indeed 27-28.
Have we done? Okay. We now move on to the questions on the priority order paper. Each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions that is proportionate to their size. The first question is titled Decision Making from Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank the member for her question? It's the decisions I've taken since becoming Mayor over the last 10 years that have helped us make huge strides in building a fairer, safer and greener London for everyone. I'm proud that we've now provided more than 120 million free school meals to state primary school pupils. It's noteworthy that some Assembly members made the decision to oppose this policy, which is ensuring children are now receiving a healthy, nutritious meal every day and saving parents around £500 per child per year. Last year, London reached the lowest homicide rate in recorded history per capita. 2025 also saw the fewest number of homicides of victims aged under 25 in London this century and the fewest teenage homicides in almost 3 decades. This is hugely encouraging and proof that the decision I made for a public health approach to tackling violent crime and to be tough on crime and the causes of crime was the right one. Of course, one homicide will always be one too many, but these impressive results are the product of our deliberate strategy to drive down violence. Again, some of the Assembly took the wrong decision by opposing the increases in funding for the Met from City Hall over the last 10 years. Another decision I'm proud of is the rollout of ULEZ London-wide, which has had a huge impact on the quality of air right across our city. But despite the clear evidence that toxic air pollution stunts the lungs of children and is linked to a host of life-changing illnesses, there were some in the Assembly who made the decision to oppose the ULEZ. The facts now speak for themselves. ULEZ is working. It was a tough decision, but clearly the right one. There are other decisions that I'm proud of as Mayor, introducing the Harbour bus fare, keeping TfL fares low, increasing funding to tackle rough sleeping, creating over 1 million positive opportunities and providing mentors for London's young people, building record numbers of council and affordable homes, and crucially standing up for London's values. The common thread that continues to run through everything I do is a desire to ensure that all Londoners, irrespective of background, race, sex, religion, disability or class, can get the chance to reach their full potential.
Unfortunately, Chair, I don't have time to list the amount of disastrous decisions this Mayor has made, so I'll have to wait for another time. Thank you.
Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. And when I first wrote these questions, I didn't know that you were going to be attacked quite so heavily for your support for Pride Month and that. So before I start on this line of questioning, I wanted to firstly thank you for that support, not only for the community itself, but I think people like you standing up on this issue does so much for young children of all faiths growing up in those devout families to know that faith and tolerance and acceptance can coexist. And so I wanted to thank you for that and make clear that these questions aren't talking so much about pride and your allyship. But I do want to get into the decision making around funding for Pride in London. Back in 2022, you signed a mayoral decision signing off £625,000 for Pride in London. Just weeks after that, a role that had been unpaid for 20 years, the CEO of Pride in London became a paid salary of £80,000. Did that not pique your suspicion? Did you not think this is not what the GLA funded?
Chair, can I say 2 points? Firstly, and if you indulge me, it's really important that members of the public know fraternity and friendship across this assembly, cross-party, over the last couple of weeks, because we have challenge and debate as we should, and I should be held to account. But it's worth people across London knowing that outside of this place, there is lots of allyship, and I thank the member for what she said earlier on. At the last MQTs, I had the answer to these questions because it was asked last time. I've not got them today, I'm afraid, and so I do apologise. It's just that I wasn't given notice of this. But last time, if you remember, she asked me a written question on these issues, and I've got a full timeline of that. And I do apologise. I've not got the detail with me today, but I can promise to write to her because the issues she raised were issues that obviously I was asking in advance of the last MQTs because she raised the question. I've not got them here today, I'm afraid, so I don't want to do an injustice.
Okay, so that's when I wanted to ask them. So you can see, I probably would have moved this because of the attacks you face. I was a bit worried that people would conflate the two issues, but I do still think it's really important. When we look back, there was finance issues being raised in 2021 with Pride in London. Now, I've been going to Pride for 20 years. I know you have too. It's nothing against the event, but this is public money, and there is huge red flags here that the GLA could see that it'd been leaked that board members were going to Mykonos with public money, and we were still funding them up until 2025, still giving them money. It's not good enough, and I appreciate the answer, but I do think that the decision-making in that needs to be looked at.
Chair, thank you. Can I just reassure her? In advance of the last MQTs, I did look at this in great detail because she'd raised the issue, but also there was stuff in the public domain that we knew about. And I was reassured in advance of the last MQTs that the right checks are taking place. What I'm happy to do is write to her with the answer I was going to give last time. And if she's got other issues, I'm more than happy to arrange an officers' meeting because this is taxpayers' money, but also it diminishes the whole endeavour. And so I'm really happy for her to hold the officers to account, meet with them, and if there are any additional checks that she thinks we should be doing, I'm more than happy to look into those as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's a commitment. Assembly Member Turrell.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. When you became Mayor, you decided to maintain the approach of the previous administration in believing that the metro lines should be devolved to TfL. Do you share my disappointment that the government has not used the creation of GB Rail to do this for London?
Yes and no. And so the way TfL have operated is because of finances in the last few years and our inabilities to pay out for a franchise. When an FA franchise comes to an end, where it's possible for us to add value, those are the ones we're focusing on. And so focus over the last couple of years has been Great Northern Inners. That's been our focus. And so there have been some franchises which have been possible for us to try and bid for, but we're very careful about what we can afford to do, but also the monies have got to follow the franchise. So our focus at the moment has been talking to the government about Great Northern Inner Suburban Services. We think we can add real value to this particular line. We've not sought to get any of the franchises that are available up until now. There is potential in the long term for southeastern inner suburban services, again, as and when that becomes available.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor. I wrote to the Secretary of State for Transport about this last year after her announcement at Labour Party conference about the timetable. And in the response from the Rail Minister, he said, as part of our rail reforms, we will give mayoral strategic authorities a statutory role in governing, managing, planning and developing the GB Rail network. So can I just ask, were you, as head of Thameslink being moved into GB Rail at the start of this month, were you consulted or was your Deputy Mayor consulted on the plans to reduce services through Bexley and Greenwich?
Chair, I'll take this away. I'm terribly sorry. I don't know the answer, but I'm more than happy to go away and come back to the member as soon as possible.
Thank you for that. That's me done, Chair.
Assembly Member McCartney, please.
Thank you. And I think one of the good decisions you and the TfL board have made is to put in another business case to take over those Great Northern services. Currently, my constituents only have 2 trains per hour off peak. Prior to COVID, we had 4. Now, the TfL business case states quite clearly they can immediately get to 4 and hopefully up to 6 on the Hertford Loop part of the service. Do you have any update as to when the government is likely to make a decision on that business case?
I'm smirking because I'm going to use the civil service phrase in due course. I've got to work with what I'm given. So the business case was submitted, she's right, to the DfT. And she's also right in terms of the offer we've got in terms of increasing frequency. The good news is we have had incredibly collegiate meetings with the DfT, TfO and DfT. I met most recently the Minister, Lord Hendy, last week. And so I'm keeping everything crossed that due course happens sooner rather than later.
Thank you. And of course, we know that the previous mayor wanted the devolution of rail lines. And at that time, the last government were quite clear that they were not going to devolve it for political reasons. So I take it you get the view that this Labour government is actually taking that proposal seriously. Certainly when I've spoken to the Secretary of State, she's been quite clear that they will give it serious consideration.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, I deliberately use the word added value. I mean, I don't want us to take over stuff for the sake of taking over stuff and having, nice branding. It's got to be, can we enhance the service? And so, for example, GBR or somebody else can provide a service, as good as, if not better than TfL. I'm quite relaxed about somebody else providing it. We just want Londoners to benefit. On this particular line, I think we can provide a better service, and our experience from the overground, Mildmay, etc., shows we can provide an additional service. So we've been quite laser-like in terms of what we're asking for, but also cognizant of the business case that needs to be shown in terms of, the money we invest, the money we get from the DfT can lead to an enhanced service, more customers, more money's coming in and so forth. It's got to wash its face, which is really important.
Thank you. And of course, we get cheaper fares because it'll be coming to the Oyster fare system. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Garrett, please.
Morning. So I would like to ask you about your decision to unleash Khan's dark blizzard of misinformation on Londoners about your performance tackling fare evasion. So on Wednesday, you told Londoners you're cracking down on fare evasion and, quote, new figures show that it's working. But that's not true. Your plan was to get fare evasion down to 1% by last year, but it was more than 3 times that. And your plan failed, and you never told anyone that. You never even mentioned the plan again. Instead, you relaxed the target to 1.5%, and you pushed the deadline back 6%, and then you announced it as a bold new plan to tackle fare evasion. But now, after a full year of that bold new plan, fare evasion is 3.5%. But it was also 3.5% the year before. It made no difference, despite all of the hard work of those frontline staff who put themselves in danger often to deal with this. So on Wednesday, when you decided to tell Londoners new figures show that it's working, that wasn't true, was it?
Chair, again, I've not got notice of the question, so I've not got the information in front of me. I'm more than happy to provide the member with the information he seeks.
This is an announcement that you made on Wednesday, and you've forgotten everything about it already, have you?
Chair, I'm more than happy to answer questions if I'm given notice of. He'll appreciate I answer 100 questions during those question time. The question under the member's name wasn't on this, but I'm more than happy to find the information and write back to him.
So one of the things you've announced on fare evasion is that you increased the fine to £100 because you said that it would be more of a deterrent. Do you know what percentage of the fines were actually paid last year?
Sure, TfL does, and I'm more than happy to provide the information from TfL.
So it's 46%. Do you think it's much of a deterrent when most of the fines issued are not paid?
Chair, again, I've not got the information, so we're talking at cross purposes, but I'm more than happy to...
So the information I'm asking for is your opinion, and I assume you have that. Do you think, in your opinion, your crackdown on fare evasion, your higher fine that will act as a disincentive of £100, most of them are not being paid? The people who travel on the tube not paying then just don't pay the fine either. Only 46% of them are collected. I mean, that's not really a deterrent, is it?
According to the member's own figures, a short while ago, he said prosecutions had increased and the numbers of revenues raised had increased, and indeed the numbers of those not paying had gone down. So one would expect from those numbers that it seems to be working.
So you're talking about prosecutions. What this week's announcement was that there were 14,406 convictions, which in effect are the same as prosecutions, because about 96% of them of prosecutions turn into convictions for this. If you look at just before the pandemic, it was nearly double that, 29,113. So it's basically halved since before the pandemic. Since this is something you've been looking at closely and that you're very engaged in and you're bringing to bear all of this strong enforcement, were you aware that prosecutions or convictions had halved since the last year before the pandemic? Is that something you think is a success? Does that sound like new figures showing that it's working, to use your words?
Well, Chair, we do know we're seeking to reduce fare evasion from what it was to a target of 1.5 within 5 years. I'm also aware that's far less than it is in other parts of the country and other parts of the globe. Our target is to get to 1.5% within 5 years. It was 3.9% last year, 3.5% this year, so the trajectory is in the right direction.
That's not correct. It was 3.5% last year and it was 3.5% the year before. Those figures are on TfL's website. What concerns me is obviously your excuse for refusing to engage on the fact of your failure this morning is that you haven't been briefed. But the press release that went out on Wednesday, that obviously had research that went into it. It claimed, and your tweet that you put out, I'm sure you typed them personally, said new figures show that the plan is working. For some reason, TfL did not include, and you did not include in your information, that fare evasion had gone from 3.5% the year before to 3.5% this year. That looks like a deliberate omission to try and bamboozle Londoners with this dark blizzard of misinformation you tell Londoners they should be worried about. You omitted that figure because you knew that it undermined your headline claim that it was working, didn't you?
Chair, I'm more than happy to answer questions at Mayor's question time. There's no surprise here. If colleagues make a note of the question, they want information for what I can get a briefing. I've not got information the member asked for. I can't help him.
So your contention is that a week and a half ago I should have submitted a question about a press release that only came out 2 days ago. Okay, interesting. Let me wrap up, because it's pretty obvious that you know that your plan isn't working and hasn't worked. And despite your claims, I think you're pretty sure that the numbers I'm quoting are correct, because they are. My concern is we all agree that fare evasion is a problem. And we have all of these people who are, frankly, we met some of them in the Transport Committee doing a very difficult and sometimes physically risky job on the front line. They deserve leadership from the top that is honest about what is happening and is clear about how it is going to be fixed. And my concern is, instead of doing that, what we have is Khan's dark blizzard of misinformation. And when you're warning Londoners about that, I hope you're looking in the mirror.
Chair, I'm pleased to have found a stat, which is the number of penalty fares issued has risen by 9% in the past year. This year, prosecutions have increased again to 14,406, leading to court awards rising to by a quarter to 2.6 million. TfL figures also show that it raised £5.4 million in revenue from penalty fare notices, a jump of 142% on 24-25. Overall, 3.3 million bus passengers had cards checked, and TfL previously said it spent nearly £22 million cracking down on fare dodging across the network, and they'll continue to do so.
This is the blizzard of misinformation that makes it sound like it's working, and we know it hasn't. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Lord Bailey, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Before I come to my main question, I would like to ask you, have you made a deliberate decision to hide your diary from Londoners? The last time you published your diary was April 2024. That's over 2 years ago.
Chair, I'm not sure when it was last published. I can look into that.
Yeah, but don't you think it's a little bit flippant to just say we'll look into it? Your diary is a matter of serious public interest, and you've not published it for 2 whole years.
Chair, I'm the first mayor to publish his diary, and I'll find out why it's not been published, but I am the first mayor to publish his diary.
OK, I'll hold you up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but it's very disappointing that you haven't done that. I'd like to ask you all, have you made the decision not to release accurate housing stats? I've repeatedly asked you to provide a list of sites for the starts and completions from your affordable housing programme, December 25, February 26 and May 2026. But these questions have so far gone unanswered. Officers saying they're drafting a response. So will you instruct your team to provide a response as quickly as possible, please?
Yeah, I thought the Chair also asked similar questions. Can I follow this up in relation to, I thought you'd asked, Chair, similar questions about starts on sites. Let me take this away.
You're correct. Last month, I asked you in person to provide a breakdown of the 10,892 affordable homes that were claimed to have been completed last year, and I followed it up with a letter. If if you are publishing these figures and these homes have been financed, they have received funding, surely it should be easy for this list to be produced, because you should be checking the progress of these things.
I agree. There must be, let me say it this way, that there's got to be obviously a list of those sites where schemes have started. Can I take this away?
Please do, Chair. Mayor, because it's beginning to become a problem. You missed the target that you were set by the government of 88,000. You missed that. You missed your own reduced target of 52,000. What changes are you going to make? Are you the problem, or is it the Deputy Mayor that is the problem? What needs to be done differently to up your performance in this area?
Well, he's not quite right in relation to the starts, is he? So in relation to the 21-26 starts, which became 23 to 26 because of the delays in the previous scheme, the Department for Communities and Local Government agreed with Homes England and the GLA a 6-month extension in terms of the starts period, which goes to the end of September. So in due course after the end of September, both Homes England and the GLA will be publishing the starts, and clearly we're hoping that we'll meet the target set by MHCLG.
The completions you've published and the government, you missed it by a wide mark. And if I'm unclear, it's because nobody's providing the statistics that are being asked for. And we all know housing's been difficult, but places like the East Midlands, the North West, the South East and the South West have all outperformed London. And you have more money, more staff. You've just alluded to the fact that you've had more time. What is going to change to make sure we get some affordable housing delivered in London?
Well, the reason why London gets more of a grant is not just we're better negotiators, but it's more expensive in London. 96% of units of housing in London is flats. It's more expensive. They tend to be taller. Land is more expensive. But in terms of completions, he's not quite right again, is he? Because we know it's been published that in each of the last 5 years, for the first time since the GLA begun, there's been more than 10,000 affordable homes completed. We also know, because it's been published, that more than 71,296 homes have been completed from the 116,000 affordable homes starts programme. So that information has been published, and it's right, both Homes England, which includes the areas he's talked about, and the GLA have got a 6-month extension in terms of the 23-26 housing starts programme.
Well, we would know that information is accurate if, of course, your team provided the information to corroborate what they're saying, and the fact that they can't provide that information is at best suspect and at worst a little bit worrying. So we don't know. That remains to be seen. And when it talks about grant, of course, London has had significantly more grant than any other area in the country. So we would expect not a comparable performance, a far better performance from London, actually. Chair, back to you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Giorgio, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, one of the areas where Londoners cannot rely on your decision-making is your management of TfL. Lately, Londoners travelling across the Tube network lately will have seen your 10 Years Together campaign plastered all across TfL property and advertising space. As you know, TfL has long maintained rules and processes designed to ensure political neutrality and to prevent publicly funded advertising space being used for political promotion. Do you believe those rules and safeguards apply to you?
I believe they do, and I suspect that they must be being followed, otherwise those notices wouldn't be there.
Well, that's funny, Mr. Mayor, because you described the campaign as 10 Years Together for London, yet the Office of Mayor of London has existed for 25 years. I just want to get my numbers right. That's correct, isn't it?
I think 26, but there you go.
Well, what's Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, sorry, the last year's been a bit of a whirlwind, so I'm trying to keep some bits in my memory and others not. So, Mr. Mayor, remind us, how long have you been Mayor of London? I know you like to talk about it a lot, so let's just remind ourselves. Could you do that? Very briefly.
Yeah, we may disagree on the numbers, but I think it's been 10 years, and some would say another month on top of that.
Yeah.
It's flown by that.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, given the corrections, it's one of those days. Mr. Mayor, stop that rubbish now. Mr. Mayor, how can you justify using TfL advertising space for what many Londoners will see as a taxpayer-funded campaign promoting your personal record in office?
I believe there'll be a difference of opinion on that. I mean, I don't think it's the case. I think I take huge sense of pride in what this city's achieved over the last few years, as recognised by international awards and so forth. And I think it's a recognition of that, and we should have civic pride in what this city's done and continues to do. If we don't have pride in our city, why should others?
Well, hypothetically, if there had been a new Mayor of London, let's say a Mayor Hall, a Mayor Bailey, another term of Mayor Johnson, would you be singing the same tune? If they had said after 4 years, let's talk about 4 years together, would you say the same thing then?
I think on a serious note, I think that the history of the executive mayor is littered with the respective mayors being incredibly proud of whatever they've personally been responsible for, whether it's Boris Johnson or Ken Livingstone. And that's one of the reasons why the GL Act was designed the way it was. It's the nature of the legislation, which is why I suspect the legislation allows our respective mayors to promote policies that benefit all Londoners.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. In terms of decision making, you've long advocated and said that local leaders and boroughs know best in terms of decision making. Over the next 4 years, will you be sticking to those comments?
Can I congratulate the member for becoming the leader of Enfield Council? Hopefully other leaders will confirm, but I work with leaders across central in and outer different parties. He has got a mandate to be the leader of that great borough of Enfield. I'm looking forward to working with him. Hopefully there'll be lots of things we agree on. There may be things we disagree on, but I think both of us at our core want to serve the people of Enfield and London, and so I look forward to working with them genuinely. And it's really important we work together because Enfield deserves us to work together rather than the knockabout stuff, which is important for democracy. But my promise is to work with him where I can, with its interest for the GLA and the people of Enfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I'm more than happy to put it on record that I will gladly work with you wherever we can to improve the lives of not just Londoners in this place, but the people of Enfield. So thank you for that response, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Hamdash, but I'll just put you on notice, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to then take one question out of order because they're close related, and that's question 2061 in the name of Assembly Member Baker or Moema, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. Yes, you will be Assembly Member Moema. So if you could first address Assembly Member Hamdash's
question. For his question. London is the greatest city in the world, and many look to us for examples of bold, decisive action to deliver genuinely affordable housing and tackle the housing crisis. At the same time, I understand the value of learning from other global cities and sharing good practice. For example, I recently met with the Mayor of Barcelona where we discussed our city's work on housing affordability. My London Housing Mission, a partnership with the sector, London boroughs and government, also worked with the Barcelona Housing Mission in 2025 to hear about their work and learn from their experiences. In 2024, my Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development, Tom Copley, visited Vienna to learn about their model of social housing finance and delivery. And just this month, he met with New York City's Deputy Mayor for Operations, Julia Kerson, to discuss shared housing challenges and solutions. It works both ways. That's why I'm pleased that we recently hosted the Mayor of Toronto, including showcasing the impressive work of the London Legacy Development Corporation at Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. I'm proud of our record of delivering genuinely affordable housing despite the extremely challenging economic conditions as a result of the disastrous legacy of the previous government, Brexit and the ongoing impact of the pandemic. We far exceeded our target to support 20,000 council home starts across London, with nearly 30,000 council homes started across City Hall programmes since 2018, with over half of these now completed. As a result, this means we're building more new council housing than any time since the 1970s and more than the rest of England combined. That's not an accident, as a result of decisions and policies made here in London since 2016. As a result of these successes, it's no surprise that other global cities are taking inspiration from London. Hackney Council's regeneration of the Colville estate has won plaudits in New York, and New York City has looked to my good practice guide to estate regeneration and has sought to improve resident participation and engagement with its own housing renewal programmes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's good to get onto the second scheduled question, I think, at this point. So it sounds like we're in agreement about the housing crisis and the need to apply all possible levers. I think as elected representatives, we see that crisis every day really starkly. You now have this City Hall developer that you're looking to action. I'd like to hear a bit more about your vision for what the City Hall developer can achieve.
Great question. One of the things that we've sought to do is no two cities are the same. Obviously, it's not apples and apples. But we have looked at what other cities have done to finance new house building. And we were really interested with how Vienna uses social house financing. So the advantage of having this City Hall Development Investment Fund is twofold. One is the ability for us to give grant, which is really important, circa £300 million potential grant. But secondly, more exciting, is we've got the ability to give very low interest rates loans. We've got £1.5 billion potentially available of capital. And so you can imagine if a can-do council says, you know, the government's relaxed its public sector borrowing rules in relation to housing. Yes, there is the availability of the loan scheme from the central government, but would you be interested in a loan from City Hall to help us build houses? Those are the sorts of things we're looking into. And also, finally, he'll be aware from his life as a councillor, there are some schemes that are stalled, viability reasons which we can go into. Is it possible for us to unlock those stalled schemes with a combination of either grant or loan?
Great. It sounds like we're drawing similar senses of inspiration, because I spoke with colleagues in Vienna yesterday, and it's a really starkly different model from ours. Now, they're building 100% affordable on state-owned land, and the Vienna Council owns 3 million square metres of land, and they're keeping hold of land rather than selling it off. And they're building homes that we would be incredibly envious of. The quality of social housing there is a race to the top rather than a race to the bottom. I know we don't have that same inheritance. In fact, we have the inheritance of Margaret Thatcher. But how can we get closer towards what Vienna is delivering?
So firstly, we collaborate with our colleagues. I don't want to sort of talk about competition, but he's taking me there. But in terms of numbers, obviously the numbers in London are just far bigger. But he's right to remind us of the heritage of Vienna. I mean, Vienna goes back 100 years in terms of their social housing stock. He'll be aware. You've got to search for a resident of Vienna who's lived in private rented accommodation. They're all in municipal housing. So the legacy is very different. The potential is in 10, 20, 30 years' time, we could have that same sort of hinterland of social housing potentially with the right municipal leadership across London. I'll just remind him, because he knows this, but for others that don't watching this, there are 32 different bodies responsible for council house building in London, then housing associations. So we are trying to get more municipal house building, more of that council house building for reasons he'll appreciate, and I suspect we agree on this.
I am conscious that Lord Kerslake did call for the City Hall developer to be incredibly interventionist, and I am a little bit worried that we are heading in an alternative direction, particularly with some of the emergency home building measures. Rather than raising the amounts affordable, we're cutting them, and we're going further away from that Vienna model. Do you see there's a way for us to get there, even in these economic situations?
I think his words of caution are salutary, and I accept the words of caution in terms of a short-term increase in house building going. We don't inadvertently sell the family jewel, the freehold land, which is really important. I want to reassure him we are in the process of a number of negotiations, which hopefully give him some comfort in terms of what we've managed to do to stimulate the market and get house building going, but really importantly, as far as he's concerned and I'm concerned, council house building going, and we should have some good news very soon.
Thank you. Before we move on, can I welcome students from Salisbury Manor Primary School in Waltham Forest? Are you there? Okay. Now, the next... I'm going to ask Assemblymember Baker to come in at this point.
Thanks, Chair. Mr Mayor, I'd like to follow up by asking about municipal housing in the form of build-to-rent. The Centre for London recently published proposals for a new municipal build-to-rent model, which would enable local authorities and other registered providers to develop housing to higher standards of quality and affordability than the vast majority of the private rented sector. Have you had an opportunity to consider if these proposals could be part of our next phase of trying to solve the housing crisis?
No, can I thank her question, which is a segue from the previous question. I discussed the Centre for London report with my Deputy Mayor. It's a very good report, he tells me, delivering the homes London's needs. She's also right to remind us in terms of the build-to-rent sector, which is incredibly important for us. I'm cognizant in particular of those Londoners who may not be eligible for council housing because they may earn above a certain level. Key sector workers, for example, I know she cares about passionately. What about housing for them? And the build-to-rent sector is a really exciting model where you can get the financial viability to build this stuff, long-term tenancies, good quality accommodation, and so forth. But also, it's the housing Londoners need. Just to give us some good news, we've already announced we're going to, by 2030, have built 6,000 key worker sector housing, intermediate housing. We think a lot of this could be in the build-to-rent sector, and the Centre for London's comments about good quality design is one we completely accept.
Thanks. Continuing on the theme of what can be done to address the unaffordability of the private rented sector, will you continue to lobby the government for localised and devolved rent control powers?
Absolutely. And so our ask for the government is not to have a one-size-fits-all across the country. We're saying in those parts of the country where respective MCAs, Metro Mayors, want to do so, give them the powers to work out a scheme that may work for their respective area. The West of Yorkshire is not the same as London. There is some good news, though, which is speaking to colleagues in the housing world expertise. The Renters' Rights Act will make a big difference, actually, because a number of things it will do. Yes, we know about the difference it will make to quality of accommodation in terms of damp and mould. Yes, we know the difference it will make in terms of no-fault evictions. The game changer people haven't really understood now is a landlord can't raise your rent more than once a year. And even if he or she does, you're able to go to a tribunal to have that assessed. And we think that could be quite a deft way to try and stabilise a bit rents in London over the short to medium term. So 2.7 million Londoners renting privately. We think this is a piece of good news that hasn't really been talked about as much as the other two bits of the Renters' Rights Act has done. But I'll carry on lobbying for the ability for us to have the powers to have rent controls in London.
Thanks very much, and hopefully we'll start to see the impact of that flow through to rents sooner rather than later. Back to you, Chair.
The next question is from Assembly Member Wilson and concerns Net Zero 2030.
Can I thank the member for his question? I've always been honest about the scale of the challenge to meet net zero. City Hall cannot achieve this on its own, and I've never pretended otherwise. However, that does not change the direction of travel or my commitment to building a greener, fairer and more resilient London. Net Zero 2030 has never been about chasing a target on a spreadsheet, but instead it's about setting a target to mobilise action to improve people's lives and help tackle one of the biggest challenges of our time. It's about working to build a city where people can afford to heat their homes, where energy bills are lower, where children grow up breathing cleaner air, and where London is less exposed to global energy shocks. We've seen how events around the world, including President Trump's war in Iran, can send gas prices soaring overnight, and Londoners end up paying the price. Reducing our dependence on fossil fuels is good for the climate and for household budgets, energy security and London's economy. It's a win-win. And that's why I focus on taking practical action, and we're delivering results. London's emissions have fallen by around 37% since 1990 and by 23% since 2016, whilst we've also expanded cleaner transport, delivered improved air quality, supported warmer homes and invested in renewable energy and climate resilience. I'm proud to say that across the GLA group, we're on track to reduce emissions by 84% by 2030. The real choice isn't net zero and doing nothing. The real choice is between investing in a healthier, more affordable and more secure future, or remaining dependent on a system that leaves Londoners exposed to rising bills and global instability. City Hall cannot deliver this transition alone. We need national government, businesses and investors to play their part too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that answer. This is a topic that we've discussed a great many times, and also in other committees and so on. I've never quite had a satisfactory answer to the additional cost of aiming for this 2030 target over and above the 2050 legal obligations. We've been told that those figures don't exist because, why would you do that exercise when that's not your target? But I still consistently fail to see how squandering this money on an unachievable target, which we've now had this admission that is unachievable, complies with your genuine value for money obligations under the GLA Act. I think there's a real issue here. We're throwing good money after bad, and I just think that having taken this opportunity to admit that the target is going to be missed, is that not an opportunity to recalibrate your thinking?
Well, Chair, I'm more than happy if the members wants to identify money that's been spent otherwise wouldn't be spent, to look into how we can pivot spend that. But I'll give them examples of money we'd spend anyway that helps us reach the target. Buy new trains for the Piccadilly line. That helps us get to net zero, but it's something we need to do because the fleet's coming to an end. buying new trains for the Docklands Light Railway helps us get to net zero, but we'd have to buy those trains anyway. Buying zero-emission buses, unless you're suggesting we buy diesel buses rather than zero-emission buses, I'm not sure what the pivot, what the switch spend is. And the same goes in relation to my answer to the consequences of us being reliant upon the gas market. We are investing in making homes more insulated in London. Why is that important? Because it reduces people's bills. It helps with the cost of living crisis. It also helps to get to net zero as well. So I'm more than happy if he's got suggestions of things we shouldn't be spending on to look into those on a value for money basis, as well as we can have a discussion about whether net zero is sensible or not.
Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that, because obviously there are things that you're doing that need to be done, and I would support new rolling stock. Of course I would. We all want. It'd be nice to get the new DLR rolling stock up and running at some point. But there are things, though, that within this climate budget that we're doing, that we're hurtling quicker than we need to be doing. The things that it's not just about replacing things as they need to be done. There are conscious choices, and one in particular. We talked earlier on about the police budget and the fact that the police budget is going to be under greater pressure now as a consequence of the failure to take forward that contract that would have delivered real savings. The Police and Crime Committee last year, Deputy Commissioner Matt Jukes talked about one of the challenges being the rapid electrification of the vehicle fleet. Our capital programme will have to deal with the removal of the internal combustion engine effectively largely from our fleet. Now, that's happening far quicker than it needs to be happening. Now, if you want to look at examples of what other councils are doing, we're reform councils. In Newcastle under Lyme, straight away, £2.5 million saving by not electrifying the waste collection lorries, using that savings to reinvest in protecting weekly bin collection, a tangible frontline service that people benefit from. Why can we not do the same thing with policing here in London? We know it's under pressure. We don't need to be spending all this money so quickly on electrifying the fleet. Let's keep the police out on the beat doing their job.
Well, let's do the 2 points that arise from his question. The first point is the suggestion that the police are exempt from proper procurement processes. The police, like every public authority, should go through a proper procurement process. He's suggesting that the police shouldn't go through a proper procurement process and a supplier should be given a contract without going through a proper procurement process, and the police shouldn't have a process. I think he's wrong. That helps us drive value for money, by the way, and make sure processes are followed. The second point that flows from his question is the idea that the police fleet isn't coming towards the end of its life expectancy and it shouldn't be replaced. Why would you have a new fleet that's out of date before it's already begun? It's like suggesting 100 years ago you replace horse and carts with horse and carts rather than with the internal combustion engine. We now know the innovation in terms of zero-emission vehicles. They're not just better for the environment, they use less fuel. So you save money in terms of the fuel used as well. So on a value for money basis, I think most private sector organisations and public sector organisations, when it comes to renewing fleets, will go for the energy efficient option all day long.
I'm out of time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Assembly Member Georgiou, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, very quickly, there is a private sector solution to a lot of this stuff, which is for too long local authorities, this building under successive mayors, not just yourself, have effectively worked as charities for developers, and we don't fully utilise 106 and SIL contributions, for example, on things like solar panels on new builds, charging points, new parks, in addition to that, grid infrastructure upworks, and working in that respect. So as your London plan, the draft is coming out soon, we've got other bits coming out as we go along, is that something that you can look at to help London boroughs leverage 106 and SIL contributions?
That's a great question. So look, I think I'll make a general point about local authorities. Some local authorities are less good at getting a good deal from developers than others. He'll know this from his personal experience. And so it is important that, we try and obtain maximum value from a developer. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with developers making profit. But it's a quid pro quo. What's the planning gain to the local community? And he's spot on. There's no reason at all why local authorities shouldn't be taking advantage of negotiations with developers to get good deals for residents. That could be around the renewable sector. A lot of developers already, because of the London plan, already do things like heat pumps on big housing stock and so forth. But I'm more than happy to work with him and other leaders of London councils and the relevant leads in terms of best practice. Because if Council A is doing stuff well, why doesn't Council A share with Council B how to make sure they also get a good deal in terms of a SIL, Section 106 or whatever?
Yeah, I agree. This is more of a comment, if I may, and I'm sure we won't disagree. I just think one of the things that could be helpful is where 106 SIL contributions are not forthcoming to help bring down carbon emissions with new developments and new schemes, that it would be helpful is probably greater collaboration between London boroughs and the GLA.
Chair, can I suggest in a non-patronising way, maybe the member can raise with London Council how we can work together on this in terms of we can get housing associations involved as well in terms of best practice. I think it's a cracking idea.
Assembly member, the next question is in the name of Assembly Member McCartney.
Sorry, Chair, you threw me because it's in order. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question. The Milburn Review is a wake-up call. It's deeply concerning that 1 in 8 young people nationally are neither earning nor learning. Supporting young people into education, training or work is vital to building a fairer and more prosperous London and to ensuring we don't have a lost generation of young people across the country. The causes of this are highly complex. I met with Alan Milburn recently to discuss this important work and highlight some of London's unique challenges and opportunities. We discussed the importance of government, local leaders, schools, health services, youth organisations, communities and others, all working together to act and deliver the long-term changes young people need. There is no single solution to this problem, and many of the levers to support young people sit outside my direct control, and that's why I've called for further devolution in this area. However, I'm proud of the action we've taken to support young people within my existing powers. Through our programmes, we've already delivered over 1 million positive opportunities for young people. Since 2024, we've invested over £22 million into my Support for Young Londoners programme, providing tailored local support that has already helped 13,000 young people who were not in education, employment or training to re-engage and move forward with their lives. Through our inclusive talent strategy, we're investing £147 million to ensure training better reflects the needs of our economy and creates clearer pathways into work. And through our new AI task force, I'm exploring the challenges and opportunities for AI for young workers, which I know many perceive as a threat to their future. Through our pioneering violence reduction unit, we've supported over 500,000 young people and a further 130,000 with high quality mentoring. And we've invested £6 million to provide safe, productive free activities during the school holidays, alongside my new £30 million investment to deliver at least one late night youth club in every London borough. Despite this, I'm in no way complacent, and I'll keep working hard to improve skills provision and help create further opportunities so that every young Londoner can access the support they need when they need it.
Thank you. And I think that you're right. The Milburn report is a wake-up call. In fact, I think of young people, for example, in the eastern side of my boroughs, Edmonton and Tottenham. They often tell me they feel very disconnected to services that should be there to help them. And I think in some respects, London is ahead of the game because of the work you and others have done to try and pull the system together. But the Milburn report does talk about the need for radical system change because there is too much underfunding and fragmentation at the moment. So can I just check that you are still going to be lobbying for that devolution in 16 to 18 education and career service in particular, so we can make a whole system work together better?
Yeah, look, she'll know from her work with young people the difference that could make. So what Alan Milburn done in the first phase, I describe it, is to explain the problem. And what he's going to do by September is explain some of the solutions, and we're lobbying Alan Milburn and his team in relation to, we think, 2 potential game changers, and she's recognised both of them. One is good careers advice. There should be no wrong door for a young person when it goes to careers advice. Many of us were very fortunate when we were younger, having a big brother, mum, dad, uncle, auntie who could advise us what to do, or we had a good careers service at school. What if you haven't? How do you avoid people taking a wrong door and you going down the wrong pathway? So it's really important for us to have proper careers advice, and we're lobbying the government about the importance of that and the importance of that being devolved to London. For example, the career service would know who are the employers with the jobs. what are the skills required for the jobs, how you can match up young people with the jobs being created. And the second bit, which I think is a game changer, is devolving 16 to 19-year-olds to the GLA and mayors across the country as well. We've made a big difference in terms of devolution of 19-plus adult education, big difference. Everyone recognises that, including the DfE and DWP. We think having 16 to 19s would be transformative, particularly for the NEET generation she's talking about. And by the way, if you're not in employment, education or training as a 16, 17, 8-year-old, that affects your life chances. And when you bear in mind what's changed, when I was growing up, you'd have a Saturday job, and that give you soft skills to give you the confidence to get a proper job. A lot of those jobs are gone. For a variety of reasons we can talk about, a lot of jobs in hospitality, and many people's first jobs have now gone. And that's a real challenge for us. And that's why I think if we could get hold of 16 to 19s, we could do some really good work to give people their first job, give them the soft skills, and avoid that NEET generation. And that NEET generation, by the way, that's a 50, 60-year problem. If you're not in education employment training at that age, that's a problem.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly. Oh, I beg your pardon. So I always do this to you, didn't I? I'm so sorry. Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. I think you're being a partial chair. Must have favourites.
Take it up with your leader.
I am surprised to hear the Mayor say it's a wake-up call to read the Milborn report on youth unemployment. I'm surprised to hear Labour mention it's a wake-up call, but not one person mention business that is being stifled. It's blatantly obvious to anyone that looks when you rack up national insurance increases for employers, when you raise capital gains tax, when you increase business rates. The people that are going to lose jobs first are the young people. The youngest people are suffering, and it's on you, Mr. Mayor, because youth unemployment in the UK is around 16%. In London, it's 25%. How can you hark about your record on what you're doing for young people when it's so terrible here in the capital, and you won't speak out against our anti-growth Labour government that are punishing businesses and making sure that young people are the first ones to feel the brunt of that?
Just to get the data correct, so in London, 1.9% of 16 and 17-year-olds are classified as NEET. And those aged between 16 and 24, it's 12%. So not the number she says, but it's still challenging. And one of the reasons why it's challenging, and I've referred this to my answer, is the Saturday jobs aren't there that they were. The impact on hospitality is a big factor. And she's right, there is a link between three things happening at the same time. The increase in national insurance for employers, the increase in the minimum wage, and the increase in the youth minimum wage, all conflating at the same time, which has caused challenges, in particular for small businesses. And that's one of the things I think Alan Milburn pointed out a number of things, and that's one of the things he pointed out as a challenge.
What he pointed out was that we were paying money on welfare, but we should also pay employers or we should pay into schemes to get young people employed. Nobody is doing the basic equation that just don't take money from businesses in the first place. Just allow businesses to operate. Don't tax them out of existence. And they will do things like hire young people, but they can't do that when you're taxing them out of existence. So, Mr. Mayor, you recognise it's a problem. So please, will you lobby your government to stop hurting small businesses?
Jess, I spent all last week in relation to with small businesses at London Tech. We've had other challenges they face, and this is one of the areas of challenge that they face.
No, I'm not talking to businesses. Will tell you every day of the week that it's a challenge. I'm saying go to your Labour government and tell them to. They're very good at U-turns. Tell them to make another one.
Well, Chair, I look forward to Alan Milburn's report later on this autumn.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, the next question is from Assembly Member Roberts. It concerns the 2026 London Climate Action Week.
Can I thank the member for his patience and his question? The climate crisis is not a distant threat. It's already affecting Londoners' health, homes and livelihoods, from toxic air that harms children's lungs to extreme heat and flooding. This is a crisis Londoners see and feel in their daily lives. And it's the most vulnerable Londoners who are being hit hardest by climate change. My priority for London Climate Action Week is to accelerate the action needed to tackle the climate crisis and protect Londoners. This is not just an environmental emergency, it's a public health crisis and a matter of social justice. London Climate Action Week is one of the world's largest climate events, and it's estimated more than 75,000 people will attend over 750 events this year. Given the scale of the event, it's a genuine opportunity to turn ambition into action. I want to bring together businesses, investors, community organisations, city leaders to accelerate the changes Londoners need to see. Cleaner air, warmer homes in winter and cooler homes in summer, lower energy bills, cleaner rivers and good green jobs. London has led the way with ambitious climate targets, but I've always been clear that we can't deliver them alone. Tackling the climate crisis requires all of us, government, businesses and investors, to step up and play their part. A key focus for me is unlocking the investment needed to deliver the solutions at scale. Through the £500 million Green Finance Fund, we're already supporting projects that reduce energy costs and improve lives across London. It's over allocated £350 million, 15 projects, saving 40,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions, equivalent to taking over 27,000 cars off the road. We'll be bringing city mayors to London as well. By working together, we can go further and faster, accelerating solutions and delivering investment that benefits London and cities across the world. And as importantly, we need to broaden the conversation beyond the traditional climate sector. Young people and underrepresented communities are helping to shape the solutions and feeling the benefits of action, because those who have done the least to cause the climate crisis are those facing the greatest impacts. Throughout the week, I look forward to working with the member and others to drive a programme focused on mobilising and celebrating that collective effort.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On Bank Holiday Monday, we saw temperatures at Kew Gardens hit 34.8 degrees Celsius. That's a full 2 degrees higher than the previous all-time May record of 32.8 degrees. Despite what some of the Flat Earth Society climate change deniers in this chamber might think, we do have to move quickly. And we should be looking again at the 2024 Climate Resilience Review, which you commissioned and accepted. I appreciate you won't be able to go into the detail here, but would you be able to write to the Assembly telling us how many of the review's 50 recommendations have been implemented, how many are underway, and how many are either delayed or at risk?
I'm more than happy to do so. Also, just to let the member know, we'll also be publishing very soon a heat map as well, in terms of the challenges we face as a consequence of the issues he's raised. I know there was some commentary as he was speaking about the record-breaking temperature in May. This is an issue. I think we can't pretend it's not an issue in terms of excess deaths, in terms of the impact it has on quality of life of his residents and others. And it's something we should take seriously.
Thank you. The heat risk delivery plan, is that part of the heat map that you were just referring
Absolutely.
to? Do you have a date on, not an exact date, but, by when that will be published?
I would hope for it to be out in due course.
Thank you. We also need to look at flash flooding. After the 2021 flash floods, there were more than 2,000 properties flooded with stormwater and sewage, and the Climate Resilience Review in 2024 recommended the creation of a strategic service water authority for London. Have you asked the government to create that?
Yeah, so can I say two things? One is just to let other colleagues know, he'll know this, but the amount of money insurance companies paid out during those floods was £280 million. £280 million in money paid out by insurance companies. So there's a commercial sense in trying to avoid these properties becoming flooded, parked with the human misery. So yes, we are speaking to the government in relation to the strategic water role. We're also, he'll be aware, it's a matter of public record, expressing our concern to the government, again, publicly in relation to the actions of Thames Water or not. We are keen to make progress here. There is separately a group set up now, led by the GLA, in terms of meeting regularly to discuss what we can do in advance of flash flooding, during flash flooding, and afterwards. One of the basic things we can do is just let people know they're in an area of potential flash flooding. We sometimes get 2 months' worth of rain in 2 hours, which can have a big impact.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. No further. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is in my name, and it concerns loud music on the tube and anywhere else, really.
Thank you, Chair. While the vast majority of Londoners use headphones when travelling on public transport in the capital, I fully recognise that there's a small minority of people who have loud phone conversations or play music or videos out loud, which can be a nuisance to other passengers and disturb people's journeys. TfL research shows that 70% of 1,000 customers surveyed said they find loud music and phone calls without headphones a nuisance. This can be especially acute for those who have increased sensitivity to sounds, for example, people with autism. TfL launched this hashtag Travel Kind campaign in 2017 to encourage customers to be considerate of one another when using public transport. For instance, encouraging people to look up from their screens while travelling, making space for other passengers and highlighting priority seating. In response to ongoing concerns about loud music, TfL introduced a new phase of the campaign last summer, which was focused on encouraging customers to use headphones. The campaign launched with posters on the Elizabeth line and has since expanded to buses, the DLR, London Overground, Tube and tram services. The campaign will return to the tubes this summer to further raise awareness and reinforce the message of using headphones. Asking passengers to use headphones is not currently part of the TfL's announcement messages on the tube. I'm told this is because there are practical limits to the number of announcements that can be made, and TfL are clear that it's important that such announcements prioritise safety, security and service information messages. It's also worth considering that many passengers take issue with the number of announcements when using public transport, so for some passengers this could be compounding the problem. I agree that this is a problem though, and I want everyone to have a safe, pleasant and comfortable journey on TfL services. TfL bylaws prohibit playing music or streaming content allowed on the network without written permission. TfL's uniformed transport support enforcement officers act as a deterrent to antisocial behaviour on the network and will interact with customers in relation to mobile usage where necessary, including using enforcement when considered appropriate. Chair, I ask all Londoners to respect each other when using public transport, wear headphones and be aware of disrupting other passengers.
I mean, this is not a trivial issue for a lot of people travelling on the tube, and not just the tube, but overground as well. It's about whether or not they can continue their journeys in peace. And you're right, it is a small minority. It is because the majority of people travelling on public transport observe the niceties of not pushing your music tastes in other people's faces, or indeed not having very loud conversations while in the presence of other passengers. But it makes me wonder, I appreciate what you've said about the messaging, but what about the enforcement? Are we in a situation where we're actually giving Londoners the choice of either having to put up with noisy music or risk challenge people on the tube? And I don't know, I'm sure I'm not the only Assembly member who has challenged other travellers on the tube. Now, most of the time, they'll turn the music down. Sometimes they can really get quite aggressive. I mean, I've actually stopped travelling. I mean, this is not your concern, but I've stopped travelling on the quiet coach on the C2C because there's so many noisy people on it. And I'm fed up of challenging them. I'm absolutely fed up of picking what appears like an old man picking an argument with people. Could you at least undertake to see what prosecutions are taking place and how TfL is taking the responsibility of ensuring that their travel to work can be done in as much peace as possible?
Chair, can I just, in a non-patronising way, say this is an issue that concerns a lot of people. I mean, just to give him an idea of anecdote, in the Mayor's office, this was an issue that everyone had an opinion on. Because he's right, it's not a minority who are concerned about this. A lot of people are concerned. Just to reassure him, enforcement officers do ask customers to stop and try and educate them about headphone use. I applaud him being a good citizen and an active bystander. Obviously, be careful about your own personal safety when it comes to being a good citizen. I've got a record here of actually warnings and prosecutions that have been undertaken by TfL enforcement officers. There aren't many. There's, roughly speaking, one a year going back the last 5 years. But I'm more than happy to look at, within reason, anything we can do to try and educate Londoners. Sometimes people aren't aware the impact they're having on others of their antisocial behaviour, and actually often that conversation will make a difference, and embarrassment can work. So I'm more than happy, Chair, not just to share with him what TfL are doing, but if he's got any other ideas, or if other cities or other countries do this differently that we could replicate.
Well, the reason I raised it is because I was talking to a French national who says that those announcements are made on the public transport network in France, and And I'm not asking for constant messaging. I'm just asking for the occasional message at the station, perhaps, not in the tube, because then you're just adding to the noise. But at the station. So could you reflect upon that and come back to me and perhaps look at some of those international examples?
I'm more than happy to, Judge. And just let him know that advice often changes. So if he'll remember, about 2 years ago, the government changed its national advice about announcements to minimise announcements because it was a nuisance. But I'm more than happy to ask Steve to look into this. I like his idea about on the platforms before getting on the carriage, maybe
on the platforms. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think it is now time for a break. Yeah, and we'll come back at what time? What do we usually? 11:34. We'll be back at 11:34. Assembly members, the next question concerns public order events on the 16th of May and is in the name of Assembly Member Ahmed.
Can I thank the member for her question? I'd like to reiterate my thanks to everyone who was involved in ensuring the protests on the 16th of May could occur safely. Met police officers, Transport for London staff, security services and others. They all played a vital role in ensuring those who attended the events could exercise their democratic rights safely and peacefully. With two big protests, the FA Cup final and maintaining business as usual activities in the capital, this was a particularly challenging day for the Met. As part of the preparations, I was pleased to visit the Met's Command and Control Centre with the Prime Minister, where we were updated by the Met Commissioner and his senior team on the policing plan for the day, and who gave reassurances that any violence or incitement of racial or religious hatred would be met with the full force of the law. 43 arrests were made on the day as part of the policing operation, and a further 3 have been made since. These spanned both of these protests, and 11 of those were not linked to either protest group. Whilst it's disappointing that some of those arrested were linked to violence, and there were also incidents of racism, the protests passed off without any major incidents. The Met faces ever-growing pressure to police more protests and keep Londoners safe. This is in addition to managing the numerous cultural, ceremonial and sporting events that take place in the capital. Time and time again, the Met showed their expertise in managing these pressures despite the increasing demand over many years. However, a fairer funding allocation is needed to address the unique pressures of policing London's protests and events. My intensive lobbying led to the current government increasing the National and International Capital City Grant, NIC, for the Met by 30% last year, equating to over £63 million extra for policing in London, something the previous government failed to deliver. I'm also investing a record-breaking £1.26 billion in policing for 26-27, more than any previous mayor. However, this is still not enough, and I'll continue to lobby the government for a further increase in NIC funding so the Met is properly funded for the unique pressures of policing the capital.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And can I echo your thanks to the Met Police for the sterling work that they did that day. I was actually out with my BCU in Lambeth. We were around the St Thomas's Hospital area, which you, I'm sure, are aware that in September, after the protests, people who actually worked in the hospital found it impossible to come out because if they were black and brown, they were being abused by protesters who had actually left the protest and come to congregate outside the hospital. So the work done by the police that day, on the day and before, in terms of their negotiations with the protesters, was exemplary. Mr Mayor, just moving forward, what would you say to the Londoners who were really disturbed and worried by the fact that a white supremacist enabled 60,000 and encouraged 60,000 people to come to the centre of their city, recognising, of course, that not every person on that protest was a racist or a white supremacist and did have legitimate concerns. What would your response be to that, Mr Mayor?
Well, firstly, can I thank her for spending the time commending the police. The public often talk about the police when things go wrong, but we very rarely talk about things when they go right. That was an incredibly challenging environment to police, and the police did a remarkably good job. So I'm really grateful for her spending time with the police, but also her putting on record her thanks to the police. Look, one of the advantages of living in a democracy is people whose views you disagree with have the right to protest. There is no point having a right to free speech if you aren't allowed to be offensive. That's one of the joys of democracy, and so that's important. I think we've got to recognise, though, that just because you've got a right to do something, doing it doesn't make it okay, because it makes people feel uncomfortable and uneasy and scared and frightened and not welcome in their own city. And so what I'd say in a respectful way is, look, people have got strong views, but how you conduct yourself affects others. And so just be conscious of the way it affects others. That could be minorities, that could be Jewish people, that could be women. And so it's really important for us to recognise the responsibility that comes to living in a democracy. And I'm really pleased, by and large, that Saturday went off peacefully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question has been withdrawn, so we now go on to the question in the name of Assembly Member Small Edwards, overheating and air conditioning in London's developments.
Thanks for the question. London is already experiencing the impacts of climate change, with hotter summers becoming more frequent and intense. This poses a growing risk to Londoners, particularly the most vulnerable, which is why I'm determined to ensure that the developments we build today are resilient to current and future heat risk. A key part of this is getting the design of new developments right from the outset. Through the London Plan, we require developers to consider overheating at the planning stage so that resilience to heat risk is designed in from the very beginning, rather than relying on retrofitted solutions after problems emerge. Building design should follow the cooling hierarchy. In practice, this means demonstrating that all reasonable passive measures have been used first. This includes optimising window design, using external shading and using green infrastructure. If you look at buildings in Southern Europe, these are all vital design elements used to keep buildings cool in a sustainable and equitable way. These measures should be maximised to reduce reliance on air conditioning. This approach helps to ensure that buildings remain comfortable while also being energy efficient and affordable to run. To be clear, the London Plan does not ban air conditioning. This can and should be used where necessary. However, I'm committed to ensuring that this is not the default solution, particularly where better design can reduce the need for it, helping lower London's energy bills and limiting the impact of urban heat, where waste heat from air conditioning and buildings make cities hotter overall. Alongside this, the London Plan requires green infrastructure such as trees and green roofs to be included as part of new developments. These measures help ensure that new developments are designed to stay cool, remain affordable and are resilient to hotter summers. We'll be launching a roadmap for London on how we can adapt our city to heat risk, a crucial next step in strengthening London's resilience to warmer temperatures.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that response. Do you agree with me that it's misleading for some politicians to go out saying that there is an air conditioning ban in London?
Well, that's the nature of how some politicians operate nowadays, and social media has given them a platform to spread misinformation, disinformation and lies. Just to reassure him, neither the London Plan nor national building regulations ban air conditioning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in Europe, we see more heat-related deaths per year than we see gun-related deaths per year in America. Given the rising temperatures that we're seeing and will continue to see in the years ahead, do you think the next London Plan will place an even greater emphasis on cooling measures?
Well, I think he's right to remind us about the consequences of extreme heat. Some people jest about it's great you get a suntan, but actually the temperatures are going to levels we've not experienced before in London. The numbers of excess deaths are now running on average between 200 and 500 excess deaths a year. I mentioned flash flooding, the cost to insurance companies and the human misery, but it's a real issue. And so I think we should, in the next London Plan, be recognising that climate change is happening, but there are things we can do to mitigate how we live in that environment. So, for example, the trees we used to plant in previous decades may not be the right trees to plant now, because, as I mentioned in my answer, and he alluded to, we know the experience of parts of Europe where shading is really important when it comes to the sort of trees you plant. And so it's worth us learning the experience from other cities, what they're doing, because they're a bit ahead of us because it's hotter there, and make sure the new London Plan is fit for the next few years rather than looking backwards.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And continuing on the heating subject, we now have Assembly Member Baker calling London's transport network.
Can I thank the member for a question as well? I know the transport network can feel hot and uncomfortable at certain times. Londoners deserve to travel across our city safely in the face of ever-increasing severe weather, and TfL is working hard to combat rising temperatures for customers and transport staff. However, there's no denying that we're limited in part by the constraints of the network. For example, the Tube, being the oldest metro in the world, is built in extremely deep tunnels and built long before air conditioning was a thing. TfL has well-established hot weather plans in place to minimise potential disruption and to provide travel advice to customers. TfL's Climate Change Adaptation Plan sets out the actions needed to balance customer safety and comfort with efficiency and reliability in a changing climate. TfL is also improving its understanding of climate risks to infrastructure, customers and workers while embedding adaptation into processes and decision-making. Importantly, TfL has already taken action on cooling and learned the lessons from the disastrous new route master. For example, every bus now has a reflective roof and opening windows, while all new double-decker vehicles have air cooling capabilities. 192 air-conditioned tube trains now cover 40% of the network, and every Elizabeth line and London Overground train is air-conditioned. Approximately a third of TfL's estate is covered by vegetation that helps keep London cool. When hot weather is forecast, London Underground's hot weather plan protects infrastructure with resources on standby to respond quickly to incidents and keep services running. As the member will be aware, I previously commissioned the London Climate Resilience Review, which made welcome recommendations informing ongoing efforts to strengthen the resilience of London's critical infrastructure. Londoners will soon, she'll be pleased to know, feel the benefits of capital investment, with new air-conditioned Piccadilly Line trains expected to enter service between December 26 and June 27, and new air-conditioned DLR trains expected to re-enter service this year.
Thanks very much for that, Mr. Mayor. And as someone who still has to travel on a old route master, we can't have those new buses soon enough. But yes, you've identified that renewal of rolling stock and infrastructure upgrades are crucial. But as we come into summer again, and we've already had a heatwave this year, high temperatures, particularly on the tube, are a safety risk for passengers and staff alike. Can you talk a bit more about what short-term measures TfL can take to address this?
So thanks for she was she's assiduous mentioning the staff, which is really important. We forget about staff. So in terms of bus drivers, we've made sure that all the buses, the operators have checked to make sure there's proper air conditioning, air coolant for the bus drivers. Those cabins can get incredibly hot if they're not properly air conditioned, so it's really important they're properly air conditioned, and those checks have been undertaken. Bus drivers have also been advised, yes, they've got air conditioning in their cabins, but if their cabin is too hot, they should pull over on the side of the road. What we don't want is bus driver fatigue, leading to all sorts of challenges for the bus driver and their passengers. In terms of the tube, as I mentioned, a large percentage of our tube is now air-conditioned, 40%. That will get to 50% of the underground being covered once the Piccadilly Line trains come on stream. The other thing we're doing is basic stuff, which is to give advice regularly to remind customers, carry a bottle of water if it's hot. If you're feeling hot, think about leaving the station. We've made sure our ventilation shafts are checked, the cooling systems are working. We've even in some stations, you'll have noticed, industrial fans just to get circulation of air going. The big challenge for us, and I've challenged engineers at TfL, is how we can make the underground cooler. The challenge is how you remove the heat from an air-conditioned system in the underground, and so the engineers are working what they can do in the short term to make it less hot, because it is on some days incredibly hot.
Thanks. Just like to echo, and I'm sure on behalf of the Assembly as well, that if bus drivers are facing unacceptable temperatures in their cab, then we would, as you would, support them not working if it's unsafe. And just finally and briefly, I understand there's a specific trial on a cooling panel at Holborn Station, which potentially could be pretty useful. Do you have any specific update on that?
I experienced 11 years of misery work using that station when I was a lawyer in the olden days, and that changes can't come soon enough. It's an example of TfL piloting new things and seeing if it works, and she'll experience the industrial fans at Bank as well. So that is a pilot. If it works, we can roll it out elsewhere. The good thing about Holborn is it's very deep and it's very well used. So if it can work in Holborn, it can work anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it would be great to hear more updates on that as it progresses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The next, because on the order paper, your question was actually answered. Your next question was actually answered beforehand, and the question after that has been withdrawn. We now go to the question in the name of Assembly Member Russell on EHRC Updated Services Code of Practice.
Can I thank the member for a question? I've always been proud of London's status as a beacon for openness, equality and LGBTQI+ rights. London must continue to be a city where people are able to live openly, safely and with dignity, free from unlawful discrimination, harassment and abuse, where they can participate in public life in exactly the same way as everyone else. I understand that the updated Code of Practice for services, public functions and associations is intended to provide clarity to public authorities and service providers regarding their obligations under the Equality Act. The code is currently awaiting approval in Parliament. Once the final code is brought into force, it is essential that its implementation upholds principles of inclusion, respect and fairness. I recognise concerns that trans Londoners may have about the risk of threats to their rights and that they may be feeling this especially sharply in the lead up to Pride in London next month. However, the GLA will continue working to ensure that trans Londoners feel they're valued members of our city and entitled to take part in everyday life. This includes directly engaging with trans Londoners and the organisations that represent them through the LGBTQI+ forum. The GLA will continue to work closely with boroughs, service providers, community organisations and partners to ensure our services remain welcoming, safe and appropriate. My priority remains to ensure London is a city where everyone, regardless of gender identity, can thrive, feel safe and belong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it is really important to hear your voice in this discussion at this particular moment. Many trans and gender diverse Londoners tell me they're feeling anxious, frightened and uncertain about what the future holds, particularly following the publication of this revised Code of Practice. The first draft had been criticised by trans-led organisations and allies as being cruel and discriminatory, and the revised code remains exclusionary and, in my view, unnecessary. Given your long-standing record as an ally to LGBT+ Londoners, what conversations have you had with government about the impact of this code, and have you been advocating on behalf of trans Londoners in those discussions?
So, Chair, I personally have not had any conversations with the government in relation to this. I'm sure my Deputy Mayor, who's in charge of this area, Dr. Debbie Weeks-Bernard, has been in close contact with the government in relation to the code. And just to remind colleagues, the code is best understood as clarifying how to balance competing rights in practice. It does not introduce new legal principles. The code has been formally laid before Parliament. There is a 40-day scrutiny period during which time peers, and there are a couple present now, and MPs can review the draft. It's possible in theory for that to be rejected by MPs and peers. July 26th is when we expect the code to be approved and brought into force, and it's at that stage it becomes statutory guidance, and as you'd expect, we'll be working closely during the summer with colleagues across London in terms of how this is interpreted to make sure the people that she's concerned about aren't prejudiced in the way she worries.
Thank you. I think it's, obviously a lot of people are contacting their MPs and encouraging them to sign. There's an early day motion that the draft code is not approved. But I think trans Londoners really need to know that that you have really got their backs, and that you and Debbie Weeks-Bernard are reaching out to the government as this piece of legislation or this code goes through. It's about people's lives, and you'll know that transphobic hate crimes in London have more than doubled over the past 5 years. You'll know that 57% of trans people avoid seeking medical help even when they're unwell, and also that nearly half of trans people in the UK have attempted suicide at least once in their life. Now, I've been talking with Trans Legal Clinic, who are watching online today. They support trans Londoners experiencing homelessness, gender-based violence, medical neglect and more. Would you commit to meeting the Trans Legal Clinic team to discuss what more you can do as Mayor to improve the lives of trans and gender diverse Londoners in a tangible and meaningful way?
Just to reassure the member, can I thank her for raising those issues in the way she has, is Dr. Debbie Weeks-Bernard chairs the LGBTQI+A forum, and a lot of these issues have been raised there. My understanding is that we are considering potential impacts on service delivery, workplace practices and public engagement, with a strong focus on what she's referred to, which is preventing unintended exclusion. We're making sure that the internal guidance and staff training is kept under review. I'm more than happy, Chair, to arrange for Dr. Debbie Weeks-Bernard to meet the group she's referred to and then to follow up with any action that may be required.
Thank you. And I think it's really important that you've just talked about the implications for service providers. Do you think that you can give a clear message to London's organisations and service providers that the EHRC guidance does not prevent them from continuing to be trans-inclusive?
As I said in my first answer, the guidance doesn't change the law. It's really important to remind colleagues of that, and also just to reassure the member that in real time we are engaging with key stakeholders, including trans plus communities and women's organisations, to monitor any emerging impacts, as I said, including through the forum as well. And I'm more than happy, outside of Mayor's question time, to work with the member about any other particular concerns or issues she may have.
Thank you. Your trans-inclusive leadership really matters here. Thank you very much.
Yes. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Prince, and it concerns Section 92 officers.
Can I thank the member for his question? Section 92 of the Police Act 1996 enables London Borough Councils to make grants to MOPAC for the purchase of additional policeman resources from the Met Police Service, the MPS. This can range from funding of overtime to fund a specific initiative for a few weeks, up to the funding of an additional team of officers on a permanent or semi-permanent basis. While this is a good way for councils and police to boost local policing, there are pressures that come with arrangements like this. For example, police officers cannot be made redundant, so if council funding for officer posts stops for some reason, the Met then bears the full cost. Another consideration for the Met is about maintaining flexibility in their workforce and the ability to redeploy officers at short notice at times of high demand elsewhere, such as public order situations. Despite this, Section 92 arrangements can be a valuable tool, and I know in Havering, for example, that officers funded in this way have made a real difference in the community. The Met's recently had to take some tough choices due to budgetary constraints, including delivering over £121 million worth of savings, while at the same time working hard to increase productivity, keeping crime down and undertaking service-wide reform. Reflecting the current funding arrangements facing the Met, changes were made last year to move from a subsidised model to full recovery costs for Section 92 agreements. Currently, the Met has legacy Section 92 agreements in place with the London boroughs of Hammersmith and Fulham, Islington and Tower Hamlets under the old subsidised model. The Met has since entered into a signed agreement with Westminster City Council under the new full cost recovery arrangement. I'm told discussions on refreshed agreements are ongoing between the Met Police and the London boroughs of Barking and Dagenham, Greenwich, Southwark and Havering. At the same time, MOPAC and I will continue to work closely with the Met, councils, businesses and others to help make our town centres, neighbourhoods and our cities safer for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, may I thank you for the Friday updates that you promised, that they have been coming through, although I'm waiting for my Friday update today. Haven't got that yet. On Gallows Corner, of course. On this matter, I mean, we employ 5 police officers. They've been doing fantastic work. We're able to jointly task them with the Met. And, you know, this removes a cost from the Met. If we have to go up to the full cost recovery, we're going from just under 400,000 to 600,000, which really is a major problem for us. Is there any way that you can look at just holding the costs at where they are? We're paying their full salaries. It's just the add-on costs that we're now being asked to take on board.
Yeah, I mean, as I said in answer to the main question, but also previous questions, I mean, the Met Police Service is facing difficult legacy consequences from cumulative impact of cuts. And that's one of the reasons why they've changed the funding model. That gives them huge advantages as well in terms of autonomy of officers and so forth. And so if it's the case that a council wants to proceed with Section 92 agreements, the Met's position is that they will have to go from now onwards to a full cost recovery model.
But surely the issue here is we'll just have 5 fewer officers, because if you're cutting officers, you'll have 5 fewer.
Well, what it will mean is that the Met Police Service would argue they have officers they can use for the neighbourhood roles they're focused on and the town centre roles. I accept the logic of what he's saying. Having some contribution is better than having no contribution, which is his basic point. The Met Police Service did make a decision last year to move to a full cost recovery model. This is not the first change that has been made in these arrangements. Hilby went, remember, years ago, there used to be there were other funding models available in terms of, buy one, get one free type of stuff. And so this is not a new thing, changes happening and stuff, but I appreciate, as the new leader, his frustrations in relation to this. I will pass on his comments to the BCU in terms of the impact it could have on them, but I'll appreciate the financial pressures that Met Police are under.
Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Towell, and it's about using AI to tackle crime.
Thanks for the question. I'm pleased that the Met Police crime stats show that over the last 12 months, vehicle offences in London have fallen by 11%, nearly 11,000 fewer offences than in the previous year. This includes a 6% reduction in theft of a motor vehicle and a 14% in theft from a motor vehicle. This is welcome progress, and I'm grateful to the Met and partners for their hard work in achieving these results. But there's always more to be done in tackling these crimes, and technology has a really important role to play in helping the police and keeping Londoners safe. In the Police and Crime Plan 25-29, I acknowledge the Met's use of data and technology and its potential to enhance productivity, tackle crime and identify wanted persons. That includes the use of artificial intelligence. This is a new and rapidly evolving frontier, and the Met's use of AI, as well as MOPAC's oversight of it, is progressing carefully. Currently, the Met generally limits use of AI tools within the organisation to non-evidential administrative activities, such as summarising information and supporting freedom of information responses. Specific operational uses are trialled and assessed on a more limited pilot basis. While the Met say there are no specific trials underway in relation to vehicle crime, other AI tools are being considered that may be beneficial in terms of case file quality, investigator support and video analysis. Other pilots underway or under consideration are looking to establish how AI can assist in productivity improvement and support in specific operational areas such as tackling child sexual abuse and exploitation. There is no doubt that new fast-moving technologies like AI present exciting opportunities for policing, for businesses and for our day-to-day activities. However, this can also be a source of uncertainty and concern to the public. In our system of policing by consent, it's vital that such advances are transparent and have the trust of Londoners in mind. MOPAC's continuing role is to oversee how the Met uses emerging technologies, such as AI, to make London safer and deliver a more efficient service to make sure they represent value for public money and to assure Londoners that these tools and the data they use are managed appropriately. We'll continue working with the independent London Police and Ethics Panel to guide our ongoing oversight in this area.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor. You'll know that I've raised the issue of car theft many times in this chamber, and following our last discussion, the Deputy Mayor for Police and Crime wrote to me to confirm that the Metropolitan Police currently do not have direct access to data from the road user charging ULEZ ANPR cameras, although they can request it. And that the Metropolitan Police have recently gained access to the RUC congestion charging zone and low emission ANPR cameras. The Met Commissioner himself has frequently spoke about the need to use technology to tackle crime. And whenever I talk to officers on the ground and senior local officers in my constituency, letting the police have access to the live feed from the ULEZ cameras, potentially enhanced with AI, is a tool they constantly tell me that they need to bring vehicle crime down further. So can I just ask, is this something you will ask MOPAC and TfL to go away and look into to ensure that the police have the tools they need?
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't think it's an issue for TfL and MOPAC. It's the Met asking for it. So if the Met ask for it, I'm sure they'll have it. The Met already have the congestion charge and low emission zone cameras. What I can do instead is ask the MPS if they've asked for it and stuff to make sure we can speed this up, because there are processes to go through, but they're not difficult because they've done them before with other stuff. So I'm happy to take it away, whoever's responsible, to see that it happens sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Polanski, Advice to Londoners as London's climate warms.
Can I thank the member for his question? Climate change is no longer a distant threat for Londoners. It's something people are already experiencing today. Just last month, London broke UK spring temperature records on 2 consecutive days, while England and Wales experienced their warmest spring on record. This was not an isolated incident. With more than 300 excess deaths in London due to high temperatures in each of 2020, 2023 and 2025, extreme heat is already claiming lives, underlining the urgent need to prepare for a warmer climate. Whether it's homes becoming dangerously hot in summer, pressure on health services during heat waves, or disruption to daily life, climate change is already reshaping life in our city. The advice to Londoners is to take heat seriously, prepare early and look out for one another. The UK Health Security Agency's advice is clear. Drink fluids regularly, keep blinds or curtains closed in rooms facing the sun, open windows when it's cooler outside, avoid strenuous activity in the hottest part of the day, and check in on neighbours, friends and family members who may be more vulnerable. For homeowners, it's worth thinking about home adaptations to make them more comfortable in hotter weather by installing shading and ventilation, but I know that it's not possible for everyone, especially for Londoners who rent and those in lower incomes. The reality is that heat does not affect everyone equally. Older people, people sleeping rough, outdoor workers, people in lower incomes, and those with existing health conditions are often hit hardest. Businesses need to adapt too, by protecting staff and customers and preparing for disruption when temperatures rise. Ultimately, adaptation is about fairness. Every Londoner deserves access to cooler homes, greener spaces, shade and clean air, regardless of where they live or how much they earn. And that's why we're working with partners to prepare a roadmap for London on how we can adapt our city to a warmer climate. This is a call to action for partners across London to drive the long-term changes we need to help London adapt at scale and at pace.
Thank you, and it's really good to hear a strong call for action there, because we can talk about these things, but we ultimately do need delivery. I'm struck by how much conversation there's been in the chamber today about extreme heat, and in many ways it's not surprising. We've had the hot kind of May bank holidays, and we also had the warning from climate scientists yesterday about El Nino, saying we'll have more extreme heat this summer and indeed going into 2027. You're also right to point out this is intersectional, particularly for poorer Londoners, also disabled Londoners. We know this can literally be life-threatening. Now, 5 years ago, one of my first questions to you was about flooding in basement flats, and I asked you if you provide extra advice, and to your credit, you did do. I heard your advice there, and it was all good advice. I also would point out called Heat Wave Toolkit, and also Shade the UK from British Red Cross. My worry is, though, is this advice getting to Londoners? And so my question is, what are you going to do to make sure the advice actually gets to Londoners?
Can I thank the member, as ever, for his collegiate way of working on these issues? Can I take away and do an audit of what we're doing and then see what more needs to happen? We've now got the ability to use quite cheap tools to get messages out there and stuff. The great thing about London is more of us are on platforms than in other parts of the country, so actually it's easier to get out. Just to reassure him, in terms of the flooding stuff, what we did was we gave paper copies of advice because some of the advice was really helpful to have in hand. We can micro-target with leaflet drop-offs. This is easier because everyone's affected by and large, but we can target this advice working with great councils, housing associations to reach those, as you said, who are unequally affected by heat. So let me take this away, Chair, and I'll make sure it's an urgent plan because summer's here, basically.
Yeah, I know you absolutely get it, but just to add, I think it's over 80% of Londoners say they're overheating in their home, so it's pretty much affecting most people. In Emma Howard-Boyd's report, she called for a national heat risk strategy. Now, this is not a criticism, that's clearly not in your purview to make that happen. But what conversations are you having with government ministers to kind of encourage them to do that national heat risk strategy? Because obviously that will affect things like funding and strategy that then devolve to a London level.
Yeah, so two things. Again, thanks for his question. So one is we're raising this directly with the government departments. Secondly, we're raising it with metro mayors across London, across the country as well, because you'll be aware there is now regional leadership as well. So we've got a multi-pronged approach in relation to this, and we're going it alone as well. We're doing stuff ourselves in London as well. The government will be increasing public information campaigns this summer. He may already have seen some during the bank holiday weekend. That's really good. He'll also see and hear announcements on the radio, public transport across the country as well. And just to reassure him, we're sharing best practice with other mayors across the country. Also, we've shared things like wildfires across the country as well, because believe it or not, London has had more wildfires than other parts of the country. So we are doing a lot of shared best practice, not just right up on the centre, to cascade down as well.
That's really important work. On similar lines, we also know that something that happens when it gets very hot is people go to open water and go for a swim, understandably. There were sadly several deaths in the past month in open water, not in London, but around the rest of the country. Is there specific work you're doing to warn Londoners of risks of open water, particularly in light of the plan I support for swimmable rivers, but making sure people are doing it safely?
Chair, can I thank him for raising that and the way you raised it. Unfortunately, we lost last year young Londoners in open water. So just to reassure him, the London Fire Brigade do lots of comms in relation to this. I wasn't aware until a few years ago that when you jump into cold water, the shock on your body can cause you to seize up and stuff. So even if you think you're a good swimmer, the initial shock of jumping into open water can be life-threatening. And so we're doing a number of things with government agencies and the London Fire Brigade. One is we're checking signage to make sure there's signage in and around reservoirs, etc., across London. Secondly, the LFB have got a fantastic campaign on this front. Thirdly, which again, just to make the obvious point, many Londoners go to the beach and aren't beach savvy. There was another example of Londoners dying by the coast recently. And so we're also speaking to colleagues about raising awareness about Londoners going to the beach, about being aware of the risk at the beach as well.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut it short there. The Green Group is now out of time. The next question has been withdrawn, so it is now the turn of Assembly Member Mahfouz to talk about the VAR review.
Chair, I should have begun my opening today wishing England and Scotland the best of luck in the World Cup that began yesterday. There must be some Scottish DNA in here somewhere. In answer to the question that I've been asked, we don't need VAR for this one. There's a reason why this agreement has often been described as the deal of the century for West Ham. But for the London taxpayer, the deal negotiated by the previous mayor was the worst one imaginable. Remarkably, the deal agreed by the previous mayor sets usage fees for each match well below the cost of putting on a game. And there's no contribution to the wider costs of operating and maintaining the stadium. The deal has cost the taxpayer over £10 million a year since it began in 2016, excluding the year impacted by COVID-19. And because the previous mayor didn't include any form of break clause or ability to renegotiate payments based on actual costs, the taxpayer can expect to fund these losses for the full 99-year period covered by the agreement. Worse, the contract halves West Ham's usage fee if they're not playing in the Premier League, despite the fact there are 4 more home games a season in the Championship. This, plus the commercial impact of West Ham's relegation from the Premier League, means that we can expect losses next season for the taxpayer to be around £2.5 million higher than if the club had stayed up. It beggars belief. We've worked hard over the last decade to minimise the stadium's losses by bringing operations in-house, renegotiating contracts and investing to reduce running costs, for example, by replacing much of the retractable seating and fitting solar membranes on the roof. I also appointed a new board last year, bringing in external expertise to help drive the stadium forward. This is both about minimising operating losses and getting the maximum benefit we can for London from the stadium. For major music artists to Major League Baseball and the 2017 World Athletics Championships, the stadium stages large events which not only generate positive returns for the stadium, but also huge economic impact and reputational enhancement for the whole city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very good to see. And I can extend my good luck to the England team, in particular, Bukayo Saka, who is the Greenford boy through and through. And it's fantastic to see them on the pitch. And I'm sure they'll do us proud at the World Cup. Now, I've got that press release back from when the announcement was made, and your predecessor called it a win-win. If I can refer to what he said, it was a truly momentous milestone for the London Stadium, ensuring its credible and sustainable future. As you said, with West Ham's relegation, it now means an additional £2.5 million on the taxpayer in terms of burden. Wanted to ask you, first of all, we've been looking at, in addition to what you talked about, sponsorship opportunities for the naming of the stadium, which obviously with the relegation, how does that impact on those opportunities there? And would you call it a win-win for Londoners?
Well, I think generally speaking, the Olympics were fantastic for London, and we've arguably got one of the best legacies of any Olympic city, and we're still seeing with the East Bank development some fantastic legacy from the Olympics. I think, clearly a huge error was made by the previous mayor and those who advised him in relation to the agreement. We are. There's no point going backwards. I think, generally speaking, naming rights is an issue for Sporting Arena in London. We've got a number of Premier League clubs still in the Premier League: Spurs, Chelsea, Fulham, Crystal Palace. Brentford and Arsenal have got naming rights sort of with their stadium, but it's very difficult. The climate's very difficult, made more difficult by the way West Ham was run by the previous team and their lack of collegiality in terms of sponsors and naming rights. We do need to try and maximise revenues from this asset. It's a city asset. It's a national asset. And so we're doing the best we can with a new team of experts to try and get maximum bang for our buck. But we can't run away from the fact that it's just an awful deal.
Absolutely agree. And I think you had a report that came out earlier this week which showed that women's sport is not only winning on the pitch but off the pitch. Of course, we had the Red Roses who won and lifted up the World Cup in Twickenham last year, but off the field contributed £55 million to the London economy, which is fantastic to see. Going forward, you've talked about some of the opportunities we've got with the London Stadium, with the World Athletics Championship bid for 2029. We're looking at a future World Cup bid for Women's World Cup, and we're also looking at a future Olympics bid. How much are you going to be throwing your weight behind these opportunities?
Yeah, so we're working closely with the government in relation to the 2029 World Athletics Championships. I remember 2017 really well. In terms of, I think it's Mo Farah's last major event and Usain Bolt's. It was just an amazing showcase for the world to see London again after the 2012 Olympics. And he's right in terms of the impact the Roses winning the Rugby World Cup at Twickenham had in terms of women's sport, not just elite sports, but helping our economy as well. It is really important to bid for these events. I mean, it's important. And so we are working closely with DCMS and the FA in terms of the Women's World Cup 2035, incredibly important. A lot of these things you have to plan way in advance. Many of us may not be around in 2035, but our city will be around, and it's really important. In advance of a big event, things happen, good things happen, and afterwards as well. So, keep our fingers crossed in terms of all those bids. I'm confident because we've got really good assets and stuff, and we know how to run things.
And finally, Mr. Mayor, is it coming home?
Can I just say, Chair, over the last 10 years, it's the hope that kills you. That's, Can I say, I've got Argentina in the sweepstake.
Assembly Member Bess.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, when you were Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Communities and Local Government in 2008, why did you do nothing to address the dodgy deal that Ken Livingstone and the Labour government did to build this stadium that led to all the issues in the future?
Regrettably, Jill, City Hall Conservatives are now out of time. But from the chair, I can say Boris never followed my advice, which was to knock the thing down and build something useful. But never mind. I'm sorry, I've lost track there. Sorry.
We are on Assembly Member Desai.
Assembly Desai, yeah. Assembly Member Desai is the next Assembly Member to ask a question about the economic benefit of the 2026 World Cup on London's hospitality sector.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question. I'm excited that the Men's Football World Cup kicked off in Mexico last night. And as I said, I wish England and Scotland all the best. The Men's Football World Cup always captures the imagination across London. And although the tournament itself is being staged overseas, we fully expect it to deliver a positive and meaningful boost to London's hospitality sector. What we know from our own data is that sport consistently drives very real economic activity in London and across the country. As has been said by Senator Mahfouz earlier this week, we published new analysis that showed the difference women's sporting events made to our capital last year, a boost of almost £55 million for London's economy. And that link to hospitality is very clear. For example, the Women's Rugby World Cup final, hosted in London, generated £16.8 million in-city spending on food, drink and retail, supporting local businesses directly. London's particularly well placed to benefit because of its scale and diversity. We have a huge and varied hospitality sector, and our community support teams from all over the world. That means interest and economic activity is sustained throughout the tournament, not just when England are playing. There's also a longer-term benefit. Major sporting moments help reinforce London's global reputation, and we know that 85% of international visitors attending major events say they're more likely to return to London in future, demonstrating the role sports plays in supporting tourism and growth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, many of the games kick off later in the evenings, and the government has given pubs permission to open late for any knockout matches involving the home nations. How is TfL working to ensure that Londoners can travel home safely from pubs and fan zones during the tournament?
Just to reassure the member and Londoners, there is a comprehensive plan, and I was briefed yesterday by the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner of Met Police Service in terms of not just policing but also transport, hospitality and other pillars that are important to London over the course of the next 6 weeks. We'll make sure that the TfL Go app is updated in real time, make sure that people know about the running times of night buses, night tubes, working with local councils in terms of licensing to make sure those licensed premises advertise when they're going to open, when they're going to close, staggered closing and so forth. Safety is very important. So yes, we want to boost the nighttime economy. Yes, we want to boost hospitality. We've got to make sure, though, that our city is safe. And what we don't want is some of the negative consequences that can flow from alcohol, hot weather, and so forth. So I'm confident we've got a good plan, and we'll boost to not just us feeling good with England having a good run, but also we'll boost the hospitality sector as well.
Thank you for the reassuring answer, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Small-Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair. When it comes to London's hospitality, Mr. Mayor, West End is very much the centre of it, but it can be difficult to get a late-night meal or a late-night drink. What are you doing about this?
So I'm really pleased that the lobbying of this government's paid off. We were unsuccessful with the last government in relation to an English Devolution Act. What that means is the government is going to be giving us strategic licensing powers, incredibly important. The West End is not just an asset for the capital city, it's an asset for the country in terms of, one of the reasons why people come to London is because of our culture, our pubs, bars, restaurants, theatre and so forth. I'm afraid there is a risk averseness amongst some councillors, some council officers in relation to being confident about supporting the nighttime economy. And so, one of my jobs is to support those great businesses who want to do good stuff, want to make a great offer to Londoners, visitors and tourists, but also to work with residents to make sure they understand the competing balancing exercise that needs to be taken when it comes to supporting the nighttime economy in London.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. At this point, before we go to the next question, will the Assembly agree to suspend Standing Order 2.9b in order to allow the remaining business on the agenda to be completed?
Agreed.
Thank you. The next question is from Assembly Member Mahfouz, and it's about the environmental impact of data centres.
I thank the member for his question. As set out in the London Growth Plan, digital technologies will be a driver of growth across all of London's key sectors. This means London's economy will increasingly be dependent on data centres, which will be critical to ensuring London maintains its leading edge in data-driven sectors. London is home to Europe's largest data centre cluster, a reflection on its unique strengths, and this cluster is powering the growth of financial markets, AI and global cloud platforms. My ambition is clear. I want London to become the world's leading city for sustainable data centre development and AI infrastructure, so that the capital remains a leading global hub for digital innovation. That's why I'm committed to leading a whole city partnership approach to data centre development shaped around the environment, resilience and responsible AI. To shape this ambition, my office has commissioned a study on forecasting data centre growth in London, which was published on Wednesday, which assessed the opportunities and challenges of data centre development in London. I want data centres in London to not only meet the environmental obligations set up by regulators, such as the Environment Agency, but to strive to develop best practice and be an exemplar in minimising their impacts.
That's very welcome, Mr. Mayor. As you'll be aware, under current planning rules, if I was to build an energy from waste plant in London, I would have to be clear about what would happen with the heat offtake from that site, and I would have to get agreements in place in advance of going ahead and building it to show that I'm maximising the use of and the benefits of building that site. With data centres, there's a massive amount of heat offtake, which could be beneficial to the local businesses and properties, but yet there is no commitment or expectation that they have an agreement in place. Should there be?
Raises a really important point, and it's really important for us to recognise the challenges posed by data centres if unchecked. And so we need to be looking at what is the cooling technology when it comes to data centres. What is the requirement on data centres when it comes to not just grid energy, but water as well? What is the compromise and the set-off in terms of grid energy, but also cooling resources as well? So we are looking at what we can do in terms of the water impact, what we can do in terms of grid impact and so forth of data centres. And we're talking to colleagues at the Water Research Centre as well to make sure we can be an exemplar when it comes to this emerging opportunity, but an emerging challenge as well that he's alluded to.
And just sticking with the point about water, I didn't ask ChatGPT, but apparently a single ChatGPT query can use up to 10 times the amount of energy of a standard web search, and AI data centres globally are expected to use up half of the UK's annual water usage by 2027. What work's being done to ensure that London's water supplies are protected for the future?
Well, he's again raised an important point. An additional concern we've got is if the issue of the water demand when it comes to planning for data centres comes at the same time as we talk about hot weather, which has additional strain in terms of the need for domestic demand for water. So we're looking into the issue of the impacts on demand for water, the domestic demand for water, particularly in hot summer times, if people are using increasingly AI. And again, my point about what is the offsetting in terms of what is not being done because of the energy/water required by data centres, which is really important. That's why we need a proper comprehensive plan for London. One of the things the London plan we're looking into is what planning regime there is around this to give local authorities clear planning guidance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question has been withdrawn, so we now move on to Assembly Member Hirani, the subject is improving the NHS.
Thanks for the question. A strong and equitable NHS that meets the needs of all Londoners is fundamental to the success of our city. I welcome the encouraging signs of improvement in the NHS after over a decade of underfunding and neglect from the previous government. We now have a government committed to putting the NHS back on its feet, supported by the 10-year health plan, and it's focused on three major shifts for care towards prevention, community-based services and better use of tech. Thanks to the incredible efforts of our NHS staff, we're seeing waiting times beginning to fall and public satisfaction in the NHS starting to increase. That means Londoners are getting diagnosed earlier, accessing treatment more quickly and getting back to their everyday lives sooner. There is still more to do, but it's heartening to see the NHS moving in the right direction. We know that London has significant health inequalities, so this progress matters, most for those who face the poorest health outcomes and the greatest barriers to accessing care. Through our health inequality strategy, I'm working with partners to tackle the wider causes of ill health and inequalities. The NHS is a key partner to this work, helping support actions such as improving air quality and providing employment opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you mentioned the figures in terms of waiting lists. In March, for elective care waiting lists, it fell by the largest amount on record, and the NHS hit its interim target of 65% of elective care patients being treated within 18 weeks. In 2025, we saw the first increase in public satisfaction in the NHS in 6 years. What difference is it making to Londoners and also to tackle the health inequalities that we experience in our city?
Well, I wasn't aware of the second stat you mentioned, but that's remarkable progress in just 20-odd months of a change of government. 22 months of change of government. And it's not just the additional investment, which is important. It's the great work of the NHS staff. It's the reforms that are being brought in. But he's right to go to the impact on Londoners, because we can get carried away with process and improvements. He's right to raise the issue of what difference does it make to the ordinary Londoner. And, getting treatment quicker, getting diagnosis quicker, getting back to full health quicker, obviously, means that quality of life, that individuals improve. But actually, think about economic productivity if people are working rather than being off sick. And so it's really important. And I want to through him, thank everyone who's worked incredibly hard in the NHS to get these results, and hopefully the trajectory is going to carry on.
Thank you. Just so you mentioned the NHS reform, so looking at the abolition of NHS England and the changing structure of how health services will be commissioned going future in London. How will this impact your work in tackling health inequalities?
So, I've got to be candid here. We've got great relations with those who work in the NHS, whether it's NHS London, NHS England, or the integrated care system. So our relationships are pretty good. And so, yeah, of course, there's been a change in structures and stuff, but actually I'm really confident going forward that we'll still carry making good progress. The good thing is the silos are being removed, and what you want basically is everyone in the same room, council leaders, the ICBs, NHS London, those from the GLA working together to deliver for Londoners. That's happening. So I'm less fussed about the structures changing. I welcome it. I'm just enthusiastic about the counter attitude of all the right people wanting to work together and not worrying about titles or silos.
Thank you. I'm going to push you a bit further on the point you made on great relations, which is great. But actually, if we look at the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Act, it actually gives you a seat at the table. What are your thoughts at the moment in terms of how you'll take that seat at the table to make sure that the views of City Hall are represented in decisions that ICBs are making in London?
Yeah, so again, I've got to be honest, ICBs haven't been exclusionary in terms of involving us. I'd be the first to complain if they were. They've been really collegiate, trying to work with us. NHS London have been great. I've been lucky with every regional director. They've been great, he or she, both been great. And so this means that we're required to be around the table. I've got to be honest, they invited us inside the room anyway, so things have been pretty good. The advantage now is you've got a direction from the HSC that we've got to be working together. So if personalities change, that will still happen, which is good, I suppose.
And going back to NHS performances, so a new Imperial College study has provided yet more evidence of the health benefits of the ultra-low emission zone, ULEZ, and its expansion, finding that emergency hospital admissions reduced after the scheme was launched. How important is clean air to Londoners?
Well, I think the report I read today in The Guardian, from the Imperial College study, is quite remarkable in terms of fewer admissions because of respiratory problems as a consequence of the ULEZ. And they've done a timeline from the first iteration of the ULEZ, what we call then the T charge, the toxicity charge, the ULEZ, and urgent hospital admissions. And anybody who suffers from asthma or knows somebody who does, or has seen somebody in a crisis, knows how frightening it is, how life-threatening it is. And I think we should be incredibly proud of the difference this policy has made to the quality of life of those individuals who are now going to hospital less than they otherwise would do. But also, it's a good example of health improvement and prevention, which is a driver of the NHS reforms embarked on by the new government.
Thank you. Now, one of the areas in the 10-year plan which has high prominence is mental health. And I recently visited two charities supporting people who'd been impacted by suicide, so The Listening Place and Body and Soul. And one thing that they are excited about in a way is the impact that the mental health A&Es, the 12 mental health A&Es that we'll have in London will have on people. Can you ensure, in terms of your work on health inequalities, but also in any decision-making tables where City Hall is represented, that the voluntary sector is also taken into account when organising services, just because of the reach that they have into communities and in the way that they're able to support and bring people in the way that traditional state services can't?
Well, Chair, can I thank the member for raising the role of the voluntary and community sector. He's got a long experience of being involved in many of them across London. I think it's particularly, the short answer is yes, but it's particularly important bearing in mind the stigma we know that is still associated with suicide, particularly amongst men, and particularly amongst Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities as well. Much of the VCS sector can reach these underserved communities, but also they can reach Londoners in a way that is sensitive to the needs they have. So I'm more than happy to give them that commitment to make sure when it comes to the diagnostic centres that are opening up across London, that the VCS is considered, particularly because different parts of London will have a different ecosystem when it comes to VCS and their networks into communities. So I'm more than happy to take it away, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
The next question is in the name of Assemblymember Clark, and it concerns home fire safety visits.
Thank you, Chair. London Fire Brigade has a responsibility to serve and protect London. One way they do this is by providing free home fire safety advice. To maximise the effectiveness of its resources, LFB applies a risk-based approach using data to identify individuals at highest risk. High-risk individuals will receive an in-person home fire safety visit from firefighters. The Brigade's target is that 60% of visits will be carried out in high-risk households. Very high-risk individuals receive a visit within 4 hours from being identified. LFB is currently exceeding targets for the number of home fire safety visits it conducts. Performance is monitored using the fire station's dashboard at a watch, station, borough and brigade level. This triage approach enables firefighters to support high-risk people and communities and provides times for other valuable community engagement, response and training activities. The most recent inspection report by HMI CFRS reflected positively on LFB's risk-based approach. LFB works closely with partners agencies at a borough level to receive high-risk referrals. In March and April this year, LFB worked in Jewish communities, as the member knows, to deliver targeted visits and prevention advice, as well as support communities following the series of horrific arson attacks. LFB's strategy for 2026-2027 is to increase the number of triages for home visits through the Home Fire Safety Checker.
Thank you for that. Do the LFB receive training, members of staff receive training, so when they're in those homes, that they know how to support vulnerable residents during those visits?
They very much do, and they particularly receive training when it comes to vulnerable residents as well. They're also, I checked in advance of MQTs, that they're also trained in relation to associated risk, for example, of safeguarding children or adults at risk, and they have a duty to report any concern or suspicion they've got as well.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, knocking on lots of doors in the last several months, but certainly in the several years before that, I think what I've noticed is that increasingly I do see information from the LFB, certainly in blocks of flats that relate to people who may live in those blocks. So those can be culturally appropriate, or they could also be information, specifically information around lithium-ion batteries and the Charge Safe campaign. I now see regularly in blocks of flats, not in all, but in lots. And I think that's really important because it's giving those messages directly to people who may be at highest risk. But one thing I'd like to ask you about is, I put this to the borough commander of Barnet, who I met with recently, but I'll put it to you as well, is it's easy to identify people who live in blocks of flats who maybe because of their lifestyle or the jobs they do may have e-bikes, e-scooters, lithium-ion batteries in their homes. What more can we do to be ensure that those messages are getting to those who live in HMOs and other settings?
Chair, as I was asking the question, I mean, I think it's a good challenge she poses me in terms of, are we doing enough for HMOs? Because I think she's right, actually. If you did I'm making a generalisation, but I bet a significant proportion of those working in HMOs may have a job where they're using one of those bikes, which may be dangerous. So can I take this away in terms of what we should be doing more? And I'm taken by Senator Polanski's point about a public education role and other issues as well. So can I take this away in terms of what more we can be doing? Because actually you can almost make a reasonable guess at which sort of homes may be at higher risk. So let me take that away, Chair, and ask LFB maybe to work with the member and her committee about whether we can micro-target messaging just to make people cognizant of the risk they face.
Yeah, because you can see evidence that it's being done in blocks of flats, but it's that broader piece of work. I think so much of public education, and I know you've referred to this before, that being in politics a lot of times is being an educator, being a teacher, being somebody who's sharing messages. And I think with the LFB, their improvement with community engagement, they're putting themselves in a position where people aren't just more comfortable seeking advice from them, but they see them as more of a community partner. And obviously, I know you believe, as I do, that that work needs to continue. And that from community engagement comes safer outcomes for London, better outcomes for London, and actually a better way of working for the London Fire Brigade so that they're working more effectively. Just with home fire safety visits, I know we've talked about vulnerable adults receiving those visits, but can any member of the public request one?
Yeah, so firstly, can I just say, just worth reminding ourselves that the LFB has learnt the lessons from the AVSL report. They weren't getting it right when it came to home visits before, and they really have changed. And I want to commend both the current Commissioner, John Smith, and the previous Commissioner, Andy Rowe, for changing the LFB. But the short answer is, yeah, Londoners can go to the London Fire Brigade's Home Fire Safety Checker website. You complete a form. Anyone can complete the form. And then people are referred to the Home Fire Safety visit also separately by social services. So I'd encourage anybody to go to the website. There's also good advice there anyway on the website as well. And all of us are on social media. We can also amplify that advice as well, because many of us have reached people that may all be, may see us as trusted message carriers and follow the advice that we amplify.
And earlier in this meeting, you were answering a question, and the Greens ran out of time, but we were answering a question about swimming safely. And as we look to having swimmable rivers in London, which is absolutely welcome, alongside of that, is there a piece of work on water safety for Londoners that may include the London Fire Brigade as they do worry about people swimming in very hot weather when they're not prepared to swim?
Yeah, can I just say this? It's a really important point she raises. I mean, so the River Thames generally is not a safe river because of the tides. It's a tidal river. And it's really important for people to be aware of that. When we're talking about swimmable rivers, there are parts of the River Thames away from the tidal part of it where it's possible to make it clean and safe. Of course, the Royal Docklands has got a safe area to swim in as well. There's a separate issue in relation to the issue of there being pathways accessible to people around the river and so forth. One of the things that we've got to do is make sure there's proper signage so people are aware of the risk. I don't want people to inadvertently think because a river is clean once you jump into it and swim in it and stuff, and particularly with the temptation of temperatures being north of 30 degrees Celsius, you jump into a reservoir or into a river, it's not safe to do so. Unless it's clearly signposted, you shouldn't be going anywhere near the actual river, and so it's really important. We are a river on a sea. We've got 41 rivers and tributaries. It's really important we take it safely. And the final point is, of course, too many Londoners can't swim. And so it's really important also to do what we can to try and encourage Londoners to learn how to swim, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult.
Absolutely right. And I've seen a lot from your Deputy Mayor, Madze Coben, as he's learning to swim. And just to Londoners, I mean, there are learn to swim lessons through our boroughs. It's really worth looking up because there are opportunities local, oftentimes free or low cost for Londoners, and primary school children are often able to swim and learn to swim at their schools. I'm going to hand back to the chair. I realise we still have 10 minutes on the clock, but I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much. And the next question is of interest to all Assembly members who've had a mailbag about licence renewals. I hope that will be touched upon, which are a poor state. So the next question concerns private hire drivers, and it's Assembly Member Bakari.
Can I thank the member for her question? I recognise the vital role that private hire drivers play in keeping London moving, supporting the economy and providing safe journeys. We recently published the Private Hire Vehicle Task Force. We recently established the Private Hire Vehicle Task Force to examine what more can be done to support private hire drivers, including in response to concerns raised about access to facilities such as toilets, kitchens and rest areas. I'm committed to working with and encouraging private hire vehicle operators to develop locations that can provide these facilities and improve working conditions for a driver, ensuring they have somewhere safe they can stop, especially when working unsocial hours. Last month, my Deputy Mayor for Transport, Seb Dance, chaired the inaugural task force, bringing together driver representatives and large operators, marking a well-received first step in addressing these issues. Under my direction, TfL has also strengthened its licensing service to support private hire drivers to remain in work, including increasing staffing and improving processes so driver renewal applications are assessed more quickly after a series of issues led to backlogs. This has helped stabilise the licensing process so that drivers can continue working without unnecessary disruption. TfL is now increasing its focus on new applications from people seeking to be licensed as a private hire driver for the first time. Beyond licensing, a comprehensive programme of support is being delivered through the Taxi and Private Hire Action Plan. This sets out how TfL is working with the industry to make being a private hire driver an attractive career while maintaining high standards of service, improving safety and reducing environmental impact. Over the past year, several measures have been delivered to support drivers and operators in building customer confidence. This includes taking stronger action against illegal activity and enhancing safety and security standards. New guidance and campaigns are supporting safer driving and helping reduce road risk, while a new online training hub, including a disability equality awareness course, will support drivers in delivering an inclusive service. Supporting drivers through the transition to cleaner vehicles is another key priority. TfL is expanding access to electric charging infrastructure and lobbying government and industry to reduce the costs associated with cleaner vehicles and charging. Work is also ongoing with the government to strengthen the regulatory framework for the sector, including following the commitment in the King's Speech to bring forward new legislation on taxi and private hire services.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I want to focus on the PHV licensing backlog. Now, TfL have said that everything's fine. It's been stabilised. Are you personally satisfied with that kind of description of being stabilised? What does that even mean? Does that actually mean that it's been fully resolved? Do you think that that is the case?
TfL has, to answer the question, put in additional focus on supporting first-time applicants and reducing the existing backlog. By it's being processed, it means applications have been prioritised once they've successfully completed all their driving assessments. And the other the good news is there have been more than 16,000 goodwill payments issued to those who didn't receive the service they deserved.
So can I just get that number? The goodwill payments that TfL has promised, what's that number and what's the percentage of the people who've been impacted by the backlog that have been paid that goodwill payment?
The number I just read out was over 16,000 goodwill payments.
I'm just a little bit concerned that you're not really appearing to have a grip on the scale of this problem. I would like it if you could write to me fully with the exact number of drivers, the number of drivers that have been paid, and the number that are still waiting, and the total amount of money that's been paid out.
I can give you information now. So the renewal service has been restored. In the last 6 months, TfL has reduced the number of new PHV applications awaiting action from 10,500 to 5,900. The number of new applicants awaiting initial assessment has been reduced from 2,000 to 600. The number of new applicants who've completed mandatory driver assessments and awaiting a final application review assessments has been reduced from 4,500 to 700.
Do you think this is something that's fully resolved? Are you happy with that? Are you thinking this is something that we should be satisfied with? I mean, you did have a conversation with Assembly Member Roberts about the need for compensation. You backed that in principle. These goodwill payments are about £300, maybe £500. And considering the hell that PHV drivers have been going through, you know, the loss of income, the rising debts, vehicle costs, the severe stress, £300? Is that really good enough? 300 quid to compensate them over what they've been going through?
Well, she'll be aware of the challenges TfL operates under financially, but this is an exceptional arrangement made. In January, I announced the Goodwill Payment Scheme. It's not intended to provide compensation to drivers for any losses they may have incurred, and putting the scheme in place does not mean TfL is accepting any liability where losses have occurred. And to date, as I've said,
Mr Mayor, you're really not answering my question. I've asked you, if you think this is good enough, if you think this is fully resolved. Do you agree that TfL have absolutely failed PHV drivers, that TfL are to blame for the backlog, and that they should take full responsibility and pay up adequately? 300 quid, Mr Mayor, that's just not enough.
I've been quite clear in relation to TfL exceptionally providing this goodwill payment. It's never happened before. We hope it never has to happen again. TfL has paid out more than 16,584 goodwill payments. The figure may slightly increase as some final payments are in the process of being
I think
paid.
People listening back to this, particularly the people who've been going through the stress, are not going to be really feeling as if that you're caring about this situation as much as I was hoping that you would be. At least acknowledge the fact that this isn't good enough and TfL should be doing a better job.
If the members are able to identify sums of money that she can use to compensate drivers, then of course the St TfL will look into. TfL have exceptionally, over and above, provided this compensation to more than 16,500 drivers. The service these drivers received wasn't good enough, which is one of the reasons why in exceptional circumstances TfL agreed to give this compensation. It in no way goes towards compensating drivers for the financial losses they've suffered.
I think anyone who's watching this will be disappointed to hear that you haven't clearly said that 300 quid is okay. 300 quid for all the stress. But I'm going to just move on to something else, because I can you're pretty chill at the moment. We've all noticed that in the way you've been answering the questions. It's probably because of your experience in Hajj. So from one Haji to another Haji, I hope that your prayers for forgiveness are accepted by Allah, and I hope this is not a risk of any act of domination from a Muslim. But on behalf of London, I forgive you. For now.
Amen.
Assembly Member Baker.
How do I follow that? Anyway, I've got a couple of questions on burning issues that I know the private hire drivers in London are really at the top of their minds at the moment. One of which is the advent of autonomous passenger vehicles. We're doing some work in the Transport Committee about it at the moment. But specifically, I previously asked you to incorporate the impact of autonomous vehicles within your AI task force, which I believe has been done. I wonder if you have any update on the work that's being done about how we can mitigate any impact on those private hire drivers, particularly in London.
I think the question that members raised is such a huge question in terms of this industry and our city generally. So the short answer is the task force led by Martha Lane Fox is independent. They're doing some great work. There are representatives from the trade union sector as well. But just to give her a scale of the opportunity and challenge is we've now seen from those, some may have used them, some may have seen on social media, these autonomous vehicles. There are two companies who are with a driver testing these in London. There is an Automated Vehicles Act that's gone through Parliament. At the moment, we've got no regulatory powers over these automated vehicles. But if it is the case, what we've seen on social media about how they've performed in other cities is a challenge, because you've got 120,000 private hire vehicle drivers in London, and you've got a situation where they could be automated. And so we can't pretend it's not happening. And you know, this is a conversation we've got to be having, and that's one of the purposes of the task force. There are, you know, I'm not an alarmist, nor am I evangelical. I'm quite realistic about the opportunities and the challenges. I don't think, generally speaking, this is one exception, people will necessarily be replaced by AI. I think people will be replaced by those who use AI and those that don't. And there's a question there. I think there are all sorts of questions in relation to automated vehicles around accessibility, those who are disabled. You know, how do you make a reasonable adjustment with no human being there? Around congestion, in terms of, is there a cap on the number of automated vehicles in relation to air quality? And those are just at the top of my head. But that's why I think she's right to pose the question. We are posing this question, but it's a national regulation thing. And so we do what we can in the context of London. But these are big issues, and that's why it's really important for us to have these questions and conversations. The good news, globally, we're leading the way in terms of, we're one of 7 cities across the globe looking at AI. We've got this task force, no other city's got the task force, and we're offering free training. I announced £12 million towards small businesses earlier this week of free training. Just think about if you're a small business. Mm-hmm. It could affect your customer supply, it could affect productivity, it could affect cash balances. Those businesses that use AI will have an advantage of those that don't. So I think we're trying our best in limited resources to get ahead of the curve. But these are tough questions, and she's right to raise them.
Thanks. And I think you will hear definitely more from the Transport Committee in time. But I think in terms of what the task force comes up with, I think we'd be really interested to hear on that. You mentioned the draft taxi and private hire vehicle bill that's been set out. The intention has been set out in the Queen's. The King's Speech. Apologies. Which is very positive in general, but definitely focuses heavily on licensing standards, and in my view, in general, London is the top of the game there. So it feels a little bit like it might be a missed opportunity for London in terms of the challenges we face in taxi and private hire, particularly around the provision and supply of black cabs, and also the working conditions, hours and fares of private hire drivers, which are such burning issues. Is this something TfL are going to try and get into consideration of this bill when it comes out? Because otherwise we'll just be seeing people brought up to our level rather than seeing any particular benefit for people who are working in that sector.
She's right. One of the downsides of being the best is people come up to your level, you see no advantages. The downside, though, is that at the moment it's people who've got approval elsewhere coming into London. That can't be right. And you'll know the concerns around the northern towns and the grooming gangs, what's happening in terms of cross-border minicab drivers and so forth around cross-border lack of assurance, which is really important. By the way, she mentioned black taxis. I'm really worried about the future of black taxis. One of the things we're trying to do is bring down the cost of these black taxis. A conversation I had recently with Steve McNamara from the LGTA in relation to what we can do to help. The Deputy Mayor is looking into what we can do to help. It's a question I'm asking. Does this requirement for the turn-in to be the way it is that really necessary in 2026? Bearing in mind the cost means there's one supplier. The cars are so expensive, and it's really, if you're a would-be black cab driver, would you spend that much money in these vehicles and stuff? So, nothing is off the table in terms of what we can do to help these two industries. But I accept she's absolutely right that at the moment there doesn't appear to be much for London in terms of that national legislation. We'll carry on lobbying.
Thanks, that's really positive. And finally, because I've got time, I'd just like to quickly ask an intervention related to TfL procurement that I'd hope to bring up under another question that hasn't been asked. But we've had much discussion in the Chamber over the past few months about the situation with the Red Route PCSOs who had their employment status and were in fear for their jobs for quite some months because of basically a dispute between multiple employers about who should take responsibility for them. It was really positive to hear that the Met did finally guarantee PCSOs their employment. It took too long, but it did happen.
Member,
I'm going to go to TfL.
Drifted off the subject
TfL procurement.
there. If you can pull it back to private hire, which sounds to me can be quite difficult.
It's a real shame because I would have thought that the Assembly wanted to hear the answer to how this happened.
I do know that the Assembly does, and another Assembly member was notified me beforehand wanting to raise this under a question that unfortunately would timed out.
I really want to know, you see, Chair, how TfL awarded a contract to an employment. I really want to know how TfL awarded a contract to an employer that wasn't prepared to respect employment law. And I would have hoped that the Assembly would like to know the answer to that and maybe ask the Mayor whether he might come back to us on that. And also I'd like to I think we'd also probably like to thank the Mayor for his interventions to make sure that this was actually, that the Met did step up in the end after failing that a long period of time.
I'll support all that except the thanks. But the Mayor has heard you. The Mayor has heard you, and I'm no doubt, bearing in mind the interest there is in the subject in the Assembly, that he could write to us in future. Is that something you can do? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's the end of the questions, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got to maintain the rules.
I could see you under pressure from members of your party. It's a shame they didn't want to hear the answers to those points.
He's under pressure from the rules, not us.
Now you can carry on doing this because you obviously want this meeting to continue well beyond time. We have come to the end of the questions, and therefore, Mr. Mayor, you're free to go. I would. Will the Assembly agree? Oh, no, the wrong one. Can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in my name, which is that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions asked. The next scheduled meeting of the London Assembly will be the plenary meeting, which will take place at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 2nd of July 2026, in the Chamber at City Hall, Well, we hope it will, bearing in mind our record of cancellations recently. But any other business the Chair considers urgent? Nothing. No other urgent business, and therefore I call the meeting to a close.